Israelites, if it be raw they can wash it away, but if roast, they must peel off the surface. If it was anointed with oil of the second type, its value in money must not be charged to the members of p. 109. The company, because they cannot redeem the second tithes in Jerusalem. 4. 5 things may be brought during legal uncleanness, but they must not be eaten in legal uncleanness: the sheaf. 2. The 2 weighed loaves. 3. And the showbread. 4. Sacrifices of peace offerings of the congregation. 5. And the kid. 6. On the feast of the new moon. The Passover which was brought during legal uncleanness may be eaten in uncleanness, because in the beginning the command came only for eating. 5. If the flesh be legally unclean and the fat unpolluted, the priest must not sprinkle its blood on the altar. If the fat be unclean and the flesh unpolluted, the priest may sprinkle its blood. But with other holy offerings it is not so, for though their flesh be unclean, and their fat remains unpolluted, the priest may sprinkle their blood on the altar. 6. If the congregation be legally unclean, or its majority, or the priests be legally unclean, and the congregation legally clean, the Passover may be kept in legal uncleanness. If the minority of the congregation be legally unclean, the clean majority can keep the first, and the unclean minority the second Passover on the 14th day of the following month. 7. When the blood of the Passover offering was poured on the altar, and it was afterwards known that it was unclean, the golden 7 plate of the high priest makes it accepted. When the body of the paschal sacrifice was unclean, the plate cannot make it accepted, as they say the Nazarite and the celebrant of the Passover have the uncleanness of the blood accepted with the plate. But the plate does not make the legal uncleanness of the body of the paschal lamb accepted. If it be legally unclean with an unknown uncleanness, the plate makes it accepted. 8. If it be legally unclean in whole or in most part, the Passover must be burned in front of the palisade, with the wood of the altar. A little which is unclean, and p. 110. That which is left over, the owners may burn it in their own courts, or on their roofs with their own wood. The stingy ones burnt it in front of the palace, that they might use the wood of the altar. 9. The Passover which was carried out of the city, or became unclean, the owner must burn it offhand. Its masters became unclean or died, let its appearance change, and let it be burned on the 16th. 1. Rabbi Jochanan, the son of Baruchah, said, even it must be burned offhand, because it has no one to eat it. 10. Bones and tendons and what is left over, they must be burned on the 16th. If the 16th happened on the Sabbath, they must be burned on the 17th, because they cannot abrogate either the laws of the Sabbath or the holiday. 11. All that is eaten in a great ox may be eaten in a tender kid, and the tops of the shoulder blades, and the gristle. Whoever broke any bone in a clean Passover, he must receive 40 stripes. But for what is left over in the clean, and broken in an unclean Passover, he does not receive the 40. 12. A member partly displaced, one must cut until he reach the bone, and he must peel off the flesh till he reach the joint, and he cuts it off. But in other holy offerings one may cleave the displaced members with an axe, since there does not exist any prohibition of breaking the bone for them. For example, from the doorpost and inwards is inside. From the doorpost and outwards is outside. The windows and thickness of the wall are reckoned as inside. 13. 2 companies which eat the Passover in one house, these turn their faces to this side and eat, and those turn their faces to that side and eat. And the boiler too is between the companies. The servant stands to mix wine. The servant must shut his mouth till he serve the other. p. 111. Company. He afterwards turns his face till he reach his own company, and then he may eat. And she who is newly married can turn her face aside and eat it. Footnotes. 109 to 1 Gr. Tal. Reads Cell. 109 to 2 Lev. XXIII. 11. 109 to 3 Lev. XXIII. 17. 109 to 4 Exod. XXV. 30. 109 to 5 Lev. XXIII. 19. 109 to 6 Num. XXVIII. 15. 109 to 7 Exod. XXVIII. 36-38. 109 to 8 1 Fran. XXIX. 19. 110 to 1 It remained uneaten overnight, and therefore must be burned, in accordance with Exod. Z. 10. 110 to 2 From the need of a boiler it appears that the wine used at the Passover was mixed with hot water. The wine itself was always red. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 8. 1. The married woman, while she is in the house of her husband slaughtered on her account, and her father slaughtered on her account, she must eat the Passover with her husband. She went to spend the first feast after her marriage in the house of her father slaughtered on her account, and her husband slaughtered on her account. She may eat in the place which she wishes. An orphan on whose account the guardian slaughtered, he may eat in the place which he wishes. A slave of two partners, he must not eat with both. A slave who is half free, he must not eat with his master. 2. One said to his slave, "Go and slaughter for me the Passover." He slaughtered a kid, he may eat it. He slaughtered a lamb, he may eat it. He slaughtered a kid and a lamb, he may eat of the first. He forgot what his master said to him, what shall he do? He must slaughter a lamb and a kid, and shall say, "If my master said to me, a kid, the kid is on his account, and the lamb is on my account. And if my master said to me, a lamb, the lamb is for him, and the kid is for me." If his master forgot what he said to him, both animals must go forth to the house of burning, and they are free from keeping the second Passover. 3. One said to his sons, "I am ready to slaughter the Passover for you, who shall first go up to Jerusalem." As soon as one of them entered with his head and the greater part of his body inside the city gate, he gained his own share of the Passover, and gained it for his brothers with him. They may always be reckoned in one company, when each one obtains the size of an olive. They may first be reckoned, and afterwards withdraw from a company till p. 112. The Passover be slaughtered. Rabbi Simon said, "Until its blood be poured out on their account." 4. He who reckoned others with himself in his portion of the lamb, the members of the company are allowed to give to him his share, and he may eat it with his own guests. And they may eat their portion with their own guests. 5. If one observed an issue twice, they may slaughter the lamb on his account on the 7th day of the issue if it be the 14th day of Nisan. If he observed it thrice, 1. They may only slaughter on his account on the 8th day of the issue if it be the 14th day of Nisan. 6. The mourner and the person who opened the heap, 2, and also the person who has the promise of release from prison, and the sick, and the aged, who are able to eat the size of an olive. They may slaughter the Passover for them. For all of them they must not slaughter the lamb on their own account alone, lest they bring the Passover into contempt. 3. Because there might happen to them some abomination. They are free from keeping a second Passover, excepting him who in opening the heap was unclean from the beginning. 7. They must not slaughter the Passover for one person. The words of Rabbi Judah. But Rabbi Hosea allowed it. Even for a company of 100, when they cannot eat the size of an olive, they must not slaughter the Passover. And they must not form a company of women, of slaves, and of little ones. 8. A mourner may be baptized, and eat his Passover in the evening, but not other holy things. He who heard of a death, or had the bones of his relations collected, he may be baptized and eat holy things. A stranger who was proselytized on the eve of the Passover, the school of Shammai say, he may be baptized and eat his Passover in p. 113. The evening. But the school of Hillel say, he who just departed from the foreskin is as legally unclean as he who just departs from the grave. Footnotes. 112-1 If one observed the issue 3 times on the same day, he could not be considered clean before he brought a sacrifice. 112-2 inches which there is a dead body. 112-3 The mourner might be too sorrowful to eat, the sick too ill to eat, and the prisoner might be detained in prison, etc. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 9. 1. He who was legally unclean, or in a journey afar off, and did not keep the first, must keep the second Passover. He mistook it, or was constrained by force, and did not keep the first, he must keep the second. If so, why is it said unclean one, or in a journey afar off? Because such persons are free from being cut off, but those bound to observe it are to be cut off if they neglect it. 2. What is a journey afar off? From Modin to, and outwards. And so is the measure from Jerusalem on every side. The words of Rabbi Akiba. Rabbi Eliezer said, from the threshold of the temple court and outwards. Said R. Jose, for this reason there is a dot on the th. 3. To explain not that it is really afar off, but that one is afar off from the threshold of the temple court and outwards. 3. What is the difference between the first and second Passover? The first Passover forbids leaven to be seen or found. But the second allows unleavened bread in one's house. The first Passover requires halal for, during eating, but the second does not require halal during eating. Both require halal in their preparations, and the paschal sacrifices must be eaten roasted on unleavened bread with bitter herbs, and they both abrogate the Sabbath. 4. The Passover offering which was brought during legal uncleanness? The man or woman with an issue may not eat of it, nor she in separation or in childbirth. But if they eat they are free from being cut off. Rabbi Eliezer frees them even in going into the sanctuary. P. 114. 5. What is the difference between the Passover of Egypt and the Passover of succeeding generations? The Passover of Egypt was taken on the 10th day, 1, and required the sprinkling with a bunch of hyssop on the lintel and the 2 side posts, and was eaten with haste in one night. But the Passover of succeeding generations exists the whole 7 days. 6. Said our Joshua, I once heard that the substitute too of the Passover offering can be sacrificed, and that the substitute of the Passover offering cannot be. I have no one to explain. Said our Akiba, I will explain. The Passover offering, which was found after being lost before the time for slaughtering its substitute, may be pastured till it be blemished, and it can be sold, and the owner can take for its price peace offerings, and so also for its substitute. After the time for slaughtering the Passover offering, its substitute may be offered for a peace offering, and so can also its substitute. 7. He who set apart an ewe for his Passover, or a male of 2 years, he may pasture it till it be blemished, and he can sell it, and its price may be used for a freewill offering. He who selected his Passover, and afterwards died, his son must not offer it after him with the intention of a Passover, but he may offer it with the intention of a peace offering. 8. The Passover offering which was mixed up with other sacrifices, all must be pastured till they be blemished, and they must be sold, and the offerer must bring the price of the best of this kind and the price of the best of that kind, and the loss he must make up from his private means. The Passover offering which was mixed up with firstborns, Rabbi Simon said, if there be companies of priests they may eat it. 9. A company 3, which lost its Passover offering, and said to someone, go and seek it and slaughter it for us. P. 115. And he went and found it and slaughtered it, and they meanwhile also took one and slaughtered it. If his be first slaughtered, he may eat of his and they may eat with him of his. But if theirs be first slaughtered, they may eat of theirs, and he may eat of his. But if it be not known which of them was first slaughtered, or both were slaughtered at once, he must eat of his Passover, but they cannot eat with him, and their Passover must go forth to the house of burning. And they are freed from keeping a second Passover. He said to them, if I be too late, go and slaughter for me. He went, and meanwhile found a lost one and slaughtered it, and they took and also slaughtered one. If theirs be first slaughtered, they may eat of theirs, and he may eat with them. But if his were first slaughtered, he shall eat of his, and they shall eat of theirs. But if it be not known which of them was first slaughtered or both of them were slaughtered at once, they shall eat of theirs, but he must not eat with them, and his lamb must go forth to the house of burning, and he is freed from keeping a second Passover. If he said to them, slaughter for me, and they also said to him, slaughter for us, all shall eat of that one first slaughtered. But if it be not known which of them was first slaughtered, both must go forth to the house of burning. If he did not say it to them, nor they say it to him, they are not sureties one for the other, and they must eat apart from each other. 10. 2 companies had their Passover offerings mixed. This company drew out one for themselves, and that company drew out one for themselves. One of these comes to those, and one of those comes to these, and thus they say, if this Passover be ours, let our hands be withdrawn from yours and be counted with ours. But if this Passover be yours, let our hands be withdrawn from ours and be counted with yours. And so with 5 companies of 5 each, and 10 of 10 each, they may draw out and join one from every company, and say so. 11. 2 persons who had their Passover offerings. P. 116. Mixed. One draws out one for himself, and the other draws out one for himself. This one can count with himself a person invited from the market, and that one can count with himself a person invited from the market. This individual comes to that one, and that one comes to this one, and so they say, if this Passover be mine, let thy hands be withdrawn from thine, and be counted with mine. And if this Passover be thine, let my hands be withdrawn from mine, and be counted with thine. Footnotes. 113 to 1 Number 6. 10. 113 to 2 About 15 miles from Jerusalem. Modin was the city of the Maccabees. 113 to 3 on the HNCHWQH, which means distant. 113 to 4 Psalm CXII. CXVII. 114 to 1 Exod. Z. 3. 114 to 2 The substitute refers to one animal changed for another, which had been intended for the Passover offering. 114 to 3 The following rules are founded on 2 principles. Firstly, that every lamb must have its own numbered company of eaters. And secondly, that no person could be numbered with 2 companies. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 10. 1. On the eves of the Passovers near to the time of evening prayer, a man must not eat till it be dark. And even the poorest in Israel must not eat till he can recline at ease, and they must not withhold from him the 4 cups of wine, even though he receives the weekly alms. 2. When they mix for him the first cup of wine, 1. The school of Shammai say, he shall repeat the blessing for the day, and after that the blessing for the wine. But the school of Hillel say, he shall repeat the blessing for the wine, and after that the blessing for the day. 3. The attendants bring before him greens and lettuce. He dips the lettuce in its sauce till we come to the time for the seasoning of the bread. They bring before him unleavened bread, and lettuce, and the fruit sauce, on 2 dishes, even though the fruit sauce is not a command. Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Zadok, said it is a command, and in the time of the sanctuary they used to bring before him the body of the Passover offering. 4. The attendants mixed for him the second cup, and here the son asks his father, and if the son have no knowledge his father teaches him, in what is this night different from all other nights? Because in all other nights we eat leavened and unleavened bread. In this night all is P. 117. Unleavened. Because in all other nights we eat every herb, in this night bitter herbs. Because in all other nights we eat flesh roasted, well boiled, and boiled. In this night all is roasted. Because in all other nights we dip what we eat once, in this night twice that is in the sauce and the seasoning. And according to the knowledge of the son his father teaches him. He begins in shame and he ends in praise. And he expounds from Assyrian ready to perish was my father, 1, till he end the whole passage. 5. Rabban Gamaliel used to say, everyone who did not speak of these 3 things in the Passover did not discharge his duty, and these are they, the Passover, the unleavened bread, and bitter herbs. Passover, because omnipresence passed over the houses of our fathers in Egypt. Unleavened, because our fathers were redeemed from Egypt. Bitter, because the Egyptians made the lives of our fathers bitter in Egypt. In every generation man is bound to look to himself as though he in person went out from Egypt, as is said, 2, and thou shalt show thy son in that day, saying, this is done because of that which the Lord did unto me when I came forth out of Egypt. For this reason we are bound to acknowledge, to thank, to praise, to glorify, to exalt, to magnify, to bless, to elevate, without limit, Him who has done for our fathers and us all these miracles. He brought us from slavery to freedom, from sorrow to joy, and from mourning to festivity, and from thick darkness to great light, and from servitude to redemption, and let us say before him Hallelujah. 6. How far does he repeat? The school of Shammai say, till a joyful mother of children. 3. But the school of Hillel say, till the flint into a fountain of waters. 4. And he finished with a blessing for redemption. Rabbi Tarfon said, who redeemed us and redeemed our fathers from Egypt, and he does not end with any other blessing. Rabbi Akiva adds, so the Lord our God and the God of our fathers shall bring us to holidays and other feast days yet to. P. 118. Come to us in peace, rejoicing in the building of thy city, and delighting in thy service. And we shall eat there the sacrifices and the Passovers, etc., until blessed be thou, Lord, the Redeemer of Israel. 7. When the attendants mixed for him the 3rd cup 1, he says the blessing for his food, with the 4th cup he finished the Hallel, and said over it the blessing of the song. 2. Between the 1st and 2nd cups if he wished to drink, he may drink as much as he likes. Between the 3rd and 4th he must not drink. 8. Persons are not free after the Passover to ask for more food. If some fall asleep during the Passover. 3. They may afterwards eat of it. All. They must not eat of it. Rabbi Jose says, if they dozed, they may eat of it. If they slept, they must not eat of it. 9. The Passover after midnight renders hands legally unclean. False intention and the remains of the feast render hands legally unclean. 4. When one repeated the Passover blessing, he is free from the sacrifice blessing, but the sacrifice blessing does not free him from that of the Passover. The words of our Ishmael. Rabbi Akiva said, this does not free from that, nor that from this. Footnotes. 116-1 It was after the 1st cup of wine was drunk that our Lord washed the disciples' feet. John G. 5. Luke XXII. 17. 117-1 to 8. XXVI. 5-11. 117-2 Exod. G. 8. 117-3 Psalms CXIII. 9. 117-4 Psalms CXIV. 8. 118-1 The 3rd cup was called the cup of blessing 1 4. X. 16. It was the one used by our Lord for the institution of the Holy Sacrament. 118-2 Psalms CXXXVI. 118-3 They may have been overcome with wine 1 Korzai. 21. 118-4 This is explained in the treatise Ands. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. P. 119. Treatise 5. Preparations of the High Priest, cleansing the altar, casting lots, daybreak, offerings, dress, prayer, the goats, Malathus, Helena, Azazel, the golden censer, the veil, Holy of Holies foundation sprinkling the blood, sending forth the goat into the wilderness, high priest burning the bullock and goat, brethren, ceremonial, rules and exceptions, repentance and atonement. Chapter I. 1. 7 days before the Day of Atonement the high priest was removed from his house to the chamber 1, Parhedron, and the council prepared for him another priest, 2, lest there happen to him any defilement. Judah said, they prepared also another wife, lest his wife die. As is said, 3, and he shall atone for himself and for his house. For his house, that is for his wife. The sages said to him, if so, there is no end to the matter. 2. All these 7 days, he the high priest sprinkled the blood, burned the incense, and trimmed the lamps, and offered the head and the foot. On the remainder of all the days, if he wished to offer, he offered. Since the high priest first offered part, and first took part in the sacrifices. 3. The elders from the elders of the great Sanhedrin delivered to him, and read before him, the ceremonial of the day. And they said to him, my lord high priest, read with thy mouth, perchance thou hast forgotten, or perchance thou hast not learned. 4. On the eve of the Day of Atonement, towards dawn, they placed him in the eastern gate of the temple, and they caused to pass before him bullocks. P. 120. Rams, and lambs, that he might be skilled and expert in his ministry. 4. All the 7 days they did not withhold from him food and drink. The eve of the Day of Atonement, with the beginning of darkness, they did not permit him to eat much, since food induces sleep. 5. The elders of the great Sanhedrin delivered him to the elders of the priesthood, who brought him to the upper chamber of the house of Tinas. And they administered to him the oath, 1, and they left him and departed. And they said to him, my lord high priest, we are ambassadors of the great Sanhedrin, and thou art our ambassador, and the ambassador of the great Sanhedrin. We adjure thee by him, whose name dwells in this house, that thou wilt not change aught of all which we have said to thee. He went apart and wept. They went apart and wept. 2. 6. If he were a learned man, he expounded. But if not, the disciples of the learned expounded before him. If he were skilled in reading, he read. But if not, they read before him. And in what did they read before him? In Job, and in Ezra, and in Chronicles. Zechariah, the son of Kabidal, said, I often read before him in Daniel. 7. If he desired to sleep, the young priest spilled with the first finger 3, before him, and said to him, my lord high priest, stand up and refresh thyself 4, once on the pavement, and they kept him occupied 5, until the time approached for slaying the victims. 8. Every day they cleansed the altar at cockcrow, or at its approach, intermediate before or after it. And on the Day of Atonement 6, at midnight. And in the 3 great feasts, at the first watch. And before cockcrow the court was crowded with Israel. Footnotes. 119-1 where the counselors sat. 119-2 called Sagan Suffragan 2 Kings XXV. 18. GRLI. 24. 119-3 Lev XVI. 6. 119-4 as might occur from the frequent changes during the Second Temple. 120-1 that he would incense within the veil Lev XVI. 12. 13. In opposition to the Sadducees, who maintained that the incense should be burned without. 120-2 that such an oath was necessary. 120-3 or the index finger. Other trans. The middle finger. 120-4 or change thyself. 120-5 singing to him unless the Lord build the house, they labor but in vain that build it, etc. Psalm CXXVII. 120-6 The Jews think that the Day of Atonement was the day on which Adam sinned, on which Abraham was circumcised, and on which Moses offered atonement for the sin of the golden calf. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. P. 121. Chapter 2. 1. At first everyone who wished to cleanse the altar, cleansed it. When they were many, they ran and mounted the ascent, and each one, who at the middle outstripped his companion by 4 cubits, won it. If 2 were equal the president said to them, lift your fingers. 1, and what is that? They lifted 1 or 2 fingers, but no one lifted the thumb in the sanctuary. 2. It happened that 2 were equal, and running and mounting the ascent, one of them thrust his companion, so that he fell, and his leg was broken. And when the great Sanhedrin saw that they were getting into danger, they decreed that they should not cleanse the altar save by lot. There were 4 lots, and this was the first lot. 3. The second lot was, who should slay? Who sprinkle? Who should take the ashes from the inner altar? And who should take the ashes from the candlestick? And who should carry the members to the ascent? the head and the right foot, and the hind feet, the tail, and the left foot, the breast, and the throat, and the two sides, and the inwards, and the fine flour, and the pancakes, and the wine. 13 priests discharged this lot. Said Ben Asai in the presence of our Akiva from the mouth of Rabbi Joshua, like to its way of motion when alive. 4. The third lot too, was for new men who came to offer incense, and they cast the lots. The fourth lot was for new men with the old, who should carry the members from the ascent to the altar. 5. The daily offering was with 9, 10, 11, 12 priests. Not less and not more. How? Itself with 9. P. 122. At the Feast of Tabernacles in the hand of 1, a glass of water there is 10. The evening offering with 11, itself with 9, and in the hands of 2, 2 faggots of wood. On Sabbath, 11. Itself with 9, and 2, in their hands 2 fragments of incense of the showbread. And on the Sabbath in the Feast of Tabernacles in the hand of 1 a glass of water. 6. The ram was offered with 11. The flesh with 5, the inner part, and the fine flour and the wine, to each 2 and 2. 7. The bullock was offered with 24 priests. The head and the right foot. The head with 1, and the foot with 2. The hind and the left foot. The tail with 2, and the left foot with 2. The breast and the throat. The breast with 1, and the throat with 3, the 2 hind feet with 2, and the 2 sides with 2, the inner part and the fine flour, and the wine, each with 3 and 3. Of which is that said? Of the offering for the whole congregation. But for the offerings of an individual? If he wished to offer, he might offer. For the skinning and cutting up? For these all were equal. Footnotes. 121 to 1 that is cast lots, which was done by placing the priests in a row, and bidding there to hold up their fingers. After fixing on a certain number, the cap of one of them was taken off. With this priest the reckoning began, and proceeded till the prearranged number fell on some one of them. And his was the lot. Particular care was taken to count the fingers which were held up, and not to number their persons, as this was considered unlawful. 1 crown. XXI. 1. 121 to 2 The third lot for burning incense was the most important. It was always done by a fresh man, so that a priest might burn incense only once during his lifetime. Luke I. 9. Rev V. 3, 4. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 3. 1. The overseer said to them, Go and look if the time for slaughter is come. If it came, the watchman said, It is brightening. 1. Matthew the son of Samuel said, Is the holy light as far as Hebron? And he said yes. 2. And why was that necessary? Because it once happened that the light of the moon came up, and they deemed it the light from the east. And they slaughtered the daily offering, and they brought it to the house of burning. And they brought down the high priest to the house of baptism. This was the rule in the sanctuary that everyone who covered his feet was required to wash. And everyone retiring was required to sanctify his hands and feet. P. 123. 3. No one entered the court for service, however clean, until he washed. The high priest made 5 washings and 10 purifications in this day, and all were in the holy place above the house of Parva, 1, with the exception of this verse 1 alone. 4. They made a screen of linen between him and the people. He undressed, descended, and washed. He came up and wiped himself. They brought to him robes of gold, and he dressed, and he sanctified his hands and feet. They brought to him the daily offering. He cut its throat, and another finished the slaughter at his hand. He received the blood and sprinkled it. He entered to offer the morning incense and to trim the lights, and to offer the head and the members, and the things fried in the pan, and the wine. 5. The morning incense was offered between the blood and the members. That of the evening too, between the members and the libations. If the high priest were old, or delicate, they heated for him iron, and they put it into the cold water, that its temperature should be changed. 6. They brought him to the house of Parva, and it was in the sanctuary. They divided with a screen of linen between him and the people. He sanctified his hands and feet and undressed. Armire said, He undressed and sanctified his hands and feet. He descended and washed. He came up and he wiped himself. They brought to him white robes. He dressed and sanctified his hands and feet. 7. In the morning he was dressed with Pelusian linen worth 12 minas, 3, and in the evening with Indian linen worth 800 zuz. 4. The words of Armire. But the sages say, that in the morning his dress was worth 18 minas, and in the evening 12 minas. All these 30 minas were from the congregation, find if he wished to add to them he might add of himself. P. 124. 8. He came to the side of his bullock, and the bullock was standing between the porch and the altar. His head to the north, and his face to the west. And the priest stood in the east, and his face westward, and he placed both hands upon him and made confession, and thus he spake, I beseech thee, O name, I have committed iniquity. I have sinned before thee, I, and my house. I beseech thee, O name, pardon one, now the iniquities and the transgressions and the sins which I have perversely committed, and transgressed, and sinned before thee, I, and my house, as is written in the law of Moses thy servant, that in this day he will atone for you, etc. And they answered after him, Blessed be the name. The honor of his kingdom forever and ever. 9. He came to the east of the court to the north of the altar. The Satan was at his right hand, and the chief of the fathers at his left. And there were the 2 goats. And the urn was there, and in it were 2 lots of boxwood, and Ben Gamaliel made them of gold, and they commemorated him as praiseworthy. 10. The son of Paddan made 12 pipes to the laver, where before there were but 2. And also he made a will for the laver, lest its water should be polluted by night. Now as 2, the king made all the handles of the vessels, of gold for the day of atonement. Helena, his mother, made a chandelier of gold near the door of the sanctuary, and she also made a tablet of gold upon which the section of the Soda 3 was written. Wonders were wrought for the doors of Nicanor, 4, and they were commemorated as praiseworthy. 11. And these were in ignominy, the family of Garmu, who were unwilling to instruct in the preparation of the showbread. The family of Abtinas, who were unwilling to instruct in the preparation of incense. Hogras, the son of Levi, knew a tune in the chant, and was unwilling to instruct. The son of Kamsar was unwilling to instruct in p. 125. The art of writing. Concerning the former it is said, the memory of the just is blessed. And concerning the latter it is said, but the name of the wicked shall rot frog. X. 7. Footnotes. 122 to 1 hour, as your wish. 123 to 1 The Gemara says it was so called because Parva a magician built this room and digged through from it to see the service of the high priest on the Day of Atonement. Or else because it was used for storing bullock hides. 123 to 2 liters between the evenings. 123 to 3 The mina of the sanctuary was worth about L5, 14s, consequently the morning dress cost about L68, 8s. 123 to 4 The zuz was worth about 6 1/2 D, consequently the evening dress cost about L21, 13, 4. 124 to 1 Literally cover over, that is atoned for. 124 to 2 King of Adiabene, a proselyte to Judaism about AD 45. 124 to 3 The accused woman. 124 to 4 See treatise on measurements, II. 3. Note. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 4. 1. He shook the urn and brought up 2 lots. One was written for the name, and the other was written for Azazel. 1. The Satan stood at his right hand, and the chief of the fathers at his left. If for the name came up in his right hand the Satan said to him, My lord high priest, lift up thy right hand. And if for the name came up in his left the chief of the fathers said to him, My lord high priest, lift up thy left hand. He placed them upon the 2 goats, and said, For the Lord is the sin offering. R. Ismail said, It was not necessary to mention the sin offering but for the Lord. And they answered after him, Blessed be the name. The honor of his kingdom forever and ever. 2. He twisted a tongue too, of brightness on the head of the goat to be sent away, and he placed him opposite the gate from whence he should be sent. And the one for slaughter he placed opposite the slaughterhouse. He himself came beside his bullock the 2nd time, and laid his 2 hands upon him and made confession, and thus he spake. I beseech thee, O name, I have committed iniquity, I have transgressed, I have sinned before thee. I, and my house, and the sons of Aaron, thy holy people. I beseech thee, O name, pardon iniquities, transgressions, and sins which I have perversely committed, and transgressed, and sinned before thee, I, and my house, and the sons of Aaron. P. 126. Paragraph continues Thy holy people, as is written in the law of Moses, thy servant, saying, that in this day he will atone for you to purify you from all your sins before the Lord. Ye shall be pure. And they answered after him, Blessed be the name. The honor of his kingdom forever and ever. 3. He slaughtered him and caught his blood in a bowl, and he gave it to him who mixed it upon the 4th platform of the sanctuary, that it might not congeal. He took the censer, and went up to the top of the altar, and raked the live coals here and there, and gathered out from the inner embers. And went down and placed it upon the 4th platform in the court. 4. Every day he gathered out the coals with one of silver and poured them out into one of gold, but today he gathered them with one of gold and he entered with it. Every day he gathered them out with one of 4 calves one, and poured them into one of 3 calves. But today he gathered them out with one of 3 calves, and with it he entered. Rabbi Joseph said, every day he gathered out with one containing a seed, 2, and poured it into one of 3 calves. But today he gathered out with one of 3 calves, and with it he entered. Every day it was heavy, but today it was light. Every day its handle was short, but today long. Every day it was green gold. Today red. The words of Rabbi Menahem. Every day he offered half a pound in the morning, and half a pound in the evening, but today he added his handful. Every day it was fine. But today the finest of the fine. 5. Every day the priests went up the ascent to the altar in the east and descended in the west. But today the high priest went up in the middle and descended in the middle. Our Judah said, a high priest ever went up in the middle and descended in the middle. Every day the high priest sanctified his hands and his feet from the laver. But today from the golden basin. Our Judah said, a high priest ever sanctified his hands and his feet from the golden basin. P. 127. 6. Every day there were therefore rows 1, of hearths. But today 5. The words of Harmeyer. Rabbi Joseph said, every day 3. But today 4. Rabbi Judah said, every day 2. But today 3. Footnotes. 125 to 1 AV. Scapegoat, or for the devil. Others translate wholly put away in reference to the sins of the people, or for the hard mountain, and others the demon of dry places. Some, however, think Azazel to be the fallen angel mentioned in the book of Enoch, and identical with Samuel, the angel of death. Symmachus translates the goat that departs. Theodotion translates the goat sent away. Aquila, the goat set free. The LXX and Josephus understand by the term the averter of ills, and the Vulgate paper emissarius. 125 to 2A ton-shaped piece of scarlet wool. 126 to 1A cab contained 2.8333 pints. 126 to 2A C contain 1 peck and 1 pint. 127 to 1 on the altar. The Talmud, by Joseph Parkman, 1878. Chapter 5. 1. They brought out for him the cup and the censer, and filled his hand full of incense, and put it into the cup, the large according to his largeness, 2, and the smaller according to his smallness, and so was its measure. He took the censer in his right hand, and the spoon in his left. He proceeded in the sanctuary until he came between the two veils dividing between the Holy and the Holy of Holies, and intermediate was a cubit. Our Joseph said, there was one veil only, as he said, the veil is the division for you between the Holy and the Holy of Holies Izod. XXVI. 33. Outside it was looped up southward, inside northward. He proceeded between them till he reached the north. When he reached the north his face was turned southward. He proceeded leftwards near the veil till he came to the ark. When he came to the ark, he put the censer between its two staves. He heaped the incense on the live coals, and the whole house was entirely filled with smoke. He went out, and returned by the way of his entrance, and he offered a short prayer in the outer house, and he did not prolong his prayer, lest he should excite terror. 3. In Israel. 2. When the ark was removed, a stone was there from the days of the first prophets, and it was called foundation. 4. It was 3 digits high above the earth, and upon it he put the censer. P. 128. 3. He took the blood from the mixer. 1. But if he entered to the place where he entered, and stood in the place where he stood, he sprinkled of it once on high, and 7 times below, and he did not purpose to sprinkle neither on high nor below, but unintentionally, 2, and so he counted, 1, 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 5, 1 and 6, 1 and 7. He went out and placed it on the golden pedestal, which was in the sanctuary. 4. They brought to him the goat, he slaughtered it and caught his blood in a bowl. He entered to the place where he entered, and stood in the place where he stood, and sprinkled of it once on high and 7 times below, and he did not purpose to sprinkle neither on high nor below, but unintentionally. 2, and so he counted, 1, 1 and 1, 1 and 2, etc. He went out, and placed it on the second pedestal, which was in the sanctuary. Our Judah said there was but one pedestal only. He took the blood of the bullock and laid down the blood of the goat, and sprinkled of it on the veil opposite the ark, on the outside, once on high, 7 times below, and he did not purpose, etc. And so he counted. He took the blood of the goat and laid down the blood of the bullock, and sprinkled of it on the veil opposite the ark, on the outside, once on high and 7 times below, etc. He poured the blood of the bullock into the blood of the goat, and infused the full into the empty. 5. And he went out to the altar which is before the Lord. This was the golden altar. He began cleansing it, and went down. From what place did he begin? From the northeastern corner, the northwestern, southwestern, and southeastern, the place where he began with the sin offering of the outer altar, at the same place he finished upon the inner altar. R. Eliezer said, he stood in his place and cleansed, and in general he operated from below upward, excepting that which was before him, on that he operated from above downwards. Click to enlarge the high priest, in linen vestments, sprinkling the blood in the Holy of Holies. For it is the blood that maketh an atonement for the soul. Lev XVII. 11. Page 128. P. 129. 6. He sprinkled on the middle one of the altar 7 times, and the remainder of the blood he poured out on the western foundation of the outer altar, and the blood from the outer altar he poured out on the southern foundation. This and that commingled in the channel, and flowed out to the Kidron Valley, and they were sold to the gardeners for manure, and they became guilty too, in themselves. 7. All work of the Day of Atonement is described in order. If the high priest performed one before the other, he did nothing. If the blood of the goat be sprinkled before the blood of the bullock, he must return, and sprinkle from the blood of the goat after the blood of the bullock. And if he had not finished the performances within, the blood was spilled. He must bring other blood, and return to sprinkle first from within. And so in the sanctuary, and so in the golden altar, because all are an atonement in themselves. R. Elazar and R. Simon say, from the place where he stopped there he began. Footnotes. 127-2 The size of the priest's hands was proportionate to his stature. 127-3 That he had been struck dead. 127-4 Supposed by some to be the Sufa in the present mosque of Omar. From its position, however, it seems more probably to have been the foundation of the altar of burnt offerings. This sacred rock is 60 feet across and 5 feet high. It is pierced quite through, to allow, as some think, the blood of the sacrifices to flow off into the noble cave and the canals beneath it. 128-1 A priest continued to stir the blood to prevent its coagulation. 128-2 Or as a thrasher. 129-1 Or the clean place. 129-2 That is. The gardeners became liable for a trespass offering. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 6. 1. Both he-goats for the Day of Atonement are commanded to be alike in color, and in stature, and in price, and to be selected at the same time, and although they be not equal, yet are they lawful. If one be selected today and the other tomorrow, they are lawful. If one of them died? If he die before the lot be cast, the priest shall make a pair for the second. And if after the lot be cast he die, the priest shall fetch another pair, and cast the lot over them anew. And he shall say, if that for the name die, this over which this lot comes will be a substitute for the name. And if that for Azazel die, this over which this lot comes will be a substitute for Azazel. And the second shall go to pasture, until he become blemished, and he shall be sold, and his price must be put into the offertory. Since P. 130. The sin offering of the congregation dies not. R. Judah said, thou shalt die. 1. And again said R. Judah, is his blood shed? The one to be sent forth shall die. Has the one to be sent forth died? His blood shall be shed. 2. The high priest came to the side of the goat to be sent forth, and he placed his 2 hands too on him and made confession, and thus he spake, I beseech thee, O name, thy people, the house of Israel, have done perversely, have transgressed and sinned before thee. I beseech thee, O name, pardon now their perverse doings, and their transgressions, and their sins, which they have perversely committed, and transgressed, and sinned before thee. Thy people the house of Israel, as is written in the law of Moses thy servant, saying, for on that day shall he make an atonement for you to cleanse you from all your sins. Before the Lord ye shall be pure. 3. And the priests and the people who stood in the court, on hearing the name clearly pronounced by the mouth of the high priest, knelt and worshipped, and fell on their faces and said, Blessed be the name. The honor of his kingdom forever and ever. 3. They delivered the goat to his conductor. All were eligible for conducting him. But the great priests made a rule, and they did not permit Israel to lead him forth. Said R. Joseph, it occurred that Arsila of Zipri lead him forth, and he was an Israelite. 4. And they made steps for him by reason of the Babylonians. 5. Who plucked off his hair and said to him, Take and go, take and go. The nobles of Jerusalem escorted him to the first booth. There were 10 booths from Jerusalem to Zuk, 6, 90 stadia, 7.5 to every mile. P. 131. 5. At every booth they said to him, There is food, there is water, and they escorted him from booth to booth, except the last. For they came not with him to Zuk, but stood afar off and saw his ass. 6. What did he do? His conductor divided the tongue of brightness in 2. Half he twisted on the rock, and half he twisted between his horns. And he thrust him backwards, and the goat rolled, and descended, and he had not reached to the half of the mountain, till his members were made members. 1. He returned and sat under the last booth until darkness set in, and when did he render garments unclean? 2. From his exit from the wall of Jerusalem. R. Simon said, from the time of his thrusting at Zuk. 7. The high priest came beside the bullock and he-goat which were to be burned. He cleft them, and brought out their entrails. He put them on a dish, and caused them to smoke upon the altar. He folded them in their skins, and caused them to be carried to the place of burning. And when did he render garments unclean? From his proceeding without the wall of the court. Our Simon said, when the fire kindled on the greatest part of the sacrifice. 8. They said to the high priest, the he-goat has arrived in the wilderness. And whence knew they that the he-goat had arrived in the wilderness? They said watchmen, who waved handkerchiefs, and they knew that the he-goat had arrived in the wilderness. Said our Judah, and was not this a great sign to them? From Jerusalem to Beth-horon there were 3 miles. They went a mile and returned, and rested the time of a mile, and they knew that the he-goat arrived in the desert. Our Ishmael 4 said, and was there not another sign to them? A tongue of brightness was twisted on the door of the sanctuary, and when the he-goat arrived, he. 132. In the wilderness the tongue blanched, as is said, though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be white as snow. 1. Footnotes. 130-1 Our Judah addresses in imagination the goat. 130-2 It seems, according to the Talmud, that there was no laying on of hands on either the morning or evening sacrifice, or on any other public sacrifice, excepting the scapegoat and the bullock, when the congregation had sinned through ignorance. 130-3 Lev XVI. 30. 130, 4 or viaduct, or causeway. 130-5 Supposed to be Alexandrine Jews, so called from hatred to the Babylonians. 130-6 Zuki supposed by Lieutenant Condor of the Palestine Exploration Fund to be the modern El Mantar, about 6.5 miles east of Jerusalem in the direction of the Dead Sea, and on the way to the ruins of Mardmon's Mars. A well near the place is still called Bur Esuk. 131-1 That is broken to pieces. 131-2 Maimonides says that those connected with the red heifer and scapegoat were rendered unclean because these animals were sin-bearing animals. All that Israelites now have to offer on the Day of Atonement is for males a white cock because Jever in Hebrew signifies a man and a cock, and for females a hen. And they pray, let this be my substitute, this my atonement. This cock goeth to death, but may I be gathered and enter into a long and happy life, and into peace. 131-3 Place of the Hollow. 131-4 Beritha, or external traditions. 132-1 Isaiah I. 18. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 7. 1. A high priest came to read. If he wished to read in linen garments, he read. If not, he read in his own white stole. The public minister of the congregation took out the roll of the law, and delivered it to the chief of the congregation, and the chief of the congregation gave it to the Sagan, and the Sagan gave it to the high priest. And the high priest stood and received it and read. He stood and read after the death too, and also on the 10th day. 3. And he rolled up the book of the law, and put it into his bosom, and said, more than what I have read before you is written here. And on the 10th 4, in the Pentateuch of overseers he recited, and pronounced upon it 8 blessings. Upon the law, and upon the service, and upon the confession, and upon the forgiveness of sins, and upon the sanctuary separately, and upon Israel separately, and upon Jerusalem separately, and upon the priests separately, and upon the remainder of the prayer. 2. He who saw the high priest, when he read, could not see the bullock and the he-goat, when they were burning. And he who saw the bullock and the he-goat, when they were burning, could not see the high priest, when he read. Not because it was forbidden, but because the way was far, and the work of both was proceeding at once. 3. If he read in linen garments, he sanctified his hands and his feet, he undressed, he descended and bathed. He came up, and wiped himself. They brought him golden garments, and he dressed, and he sanctified his hands and his feet, and went forth and offered the ram for himself, and the ram for the people, and 7 lambs without blemish of a year old. The words of our Eliezer Arkiva said, that he. 133. The morning sacrifice they were offered. And the bullock of burnt offering and the he-goat, 1, which was prepared without, were offered with the evening sacrifice. 4. He purified his hands and his feet, and undressed, and washed, and he came up, and wiped himself. They brought to him white garments, and he dressed, and sanctified his hands and his feet. He entered to bring forth the spoon and the censer, he sanctified his hands and his feet, and undressed, and he descended, and washed. He came up, and wiped himself. They brought to him garments of gold, and he dressed, and sanctified his hands and his feet. And he entered to offer the evening incense, and to trim the lights. And he sanctified his hands and his feet, and he dressed. They brought to him his own garments, and he dressed. And they escorted him to his house. And he made a feast day for his friends, when he went out in peace from the sanctuary. 5. The high priest ministered in 8 vestments. And the ordinary priest in 4, in the tunic, and drawers, and bonnet, and girdle. To these, the high priest added the breastplate, and ephod, and robe, and golden plate. In these they inquired by Urim and Thummim. 2. And they did not inquire in them for a private person. only for the king and the great Sanhedrin, and for whomsoever the congregation is necessary. Footnotes 132 to 2 Lev XVI, 132 to 3 Lev XXII, 27, 132 to 4 Num XXIX, 7, 133 to 1 Num XXIX, 7, 133 to 2 Urim lights and perfections, the Jews think, gave answer by the divine illumination of the suitable letters composing the names of the tribes which were graven on the breastplate of the high priest. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 8. 1. On the Day of Atonement, food, and drink, and washing, and anointing, and the sandal latchet, 3, and marriage duties, are restricted. But the king and bride are allowed to wash their face, and the woman after childbirth may wear sandals. The words of Eliezer, but the sages forbid them. P. 134. 2. The person who eats the size of a big date and its grain, and drinks a jawful, is liable to punishment. All edible things are united for the measure of the date, and all drinkable things are united for the measure of the jawful. Eating and drinking are not united. 3. He who eats and drinks unwittingly, is only liable for one sin offering. If he eat and work, he is liable for 2 sin offerings. He who eats what is disagreeable for food, and drinks what is disagreeable for drinking, and he who drinks fish brine, or salt gravy, is free. 4. They do not afflict young children in the Day of Atonement, but they coax them 1 or 2 years before, that they may be accustomed to the commandments. 5. If the pregnant woman be affected by the odor, they give her food, till her strength return. To the sick person they give food by order from the physicians. If there be no physicians, they give him food at his own demand until he say it is enough. 6. Him who is affected with blindness, they fed even with unclean things, till his eyes got the power of vision. Him who was bitten by a mad dog, they fed not with the caul of his liver. But Armathia ben Cherash said, it is allowed. And again said Armathia ben Cherash, to him who had throat complaint they administered medicine in his mouth on the Sabbath day, since there is uncertainty of life, and all uncertainty of life abrogates the Sabbath. 7. On whomsoever an old ruin falls, if there be a doubt, whether one be under it or not. If there be doubt, whether he be alive or dead. If there be a doubt, whether he be a foreigner or an Israelite. They open over him the heap. If they find him alive, they open fully, but if dead, they leave him. 8. The sin offering, and the offering for known transgression make atonement. Death and the Day of Atonement with repentance make atonement. Repentance atones for light transgressions, for commands positive and negative. But grave offenses are suspended, till the Day of Atonement come, and it will atone. P. 135. 9. He who said I will sin and repent, I will sin and repent. They did not give him the opportunity of repentance. I will sin, and the Day of Atonement shall atone? The Day of Atonement makes no atonement. Transgressions between man and the place 1, the Day of Atonement expiates. Transgressions between man and his neighbor, the Day of Atonement does not expiate, until his companion be reconciled. This Eliezer ben Azariah explained, from all thy sins before the Lord thou shalt be cleansed. Transgressions between man and the place, the Day of Atonement expiated. Transgressions between man and his companion, the Day of Atonement did not expiate, until his companion be reconciled. Said Akiva, happy are ye, Israel. Before whom are ye to be pure? Who will purify you? Your Father in heaven, as is said, I will sprinkle clean water upon you, and ye shall be clean. Then said the fountain of Israel, the Lord, as the fountain purifies the defiled, so the Holy One, blessed be he, purifies Israel. Footnotes 133 to 3 Sandals were, however, allowed where there was fear of serpents and scorpions. Woolen socks might be used. 135 to 1 That is God omnipresent. The Jews in a spirit of reverence use the words place and the name to denote God. In reading they do not now pronounce the word Jehovah, but substitute Adonai for it. And when Jehovah is followed by the word Adonai they then use the word Elohim. The true pronunciation of the name has been a subject of much contention. It has been variously given, as Yav, Yavu, Yahava, Yahav, and Yahva. When it was uttered on the Day of Atonement the worshippers fell on their faces in reverence for it by 2. It was spoken for the last time in the temple by the mouth of Simon the Just. Henceforward, the Gemara says whoever attempts to pronounce it shall have no part in the world to come. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. P. 136. Treatise 6. 1. Size and covering of tabernacles, what constitutes a tabernacle, exemptions, palm branches, myrtle boughs, willows, citrons, reading and blessing, thrashing the altar, rejoicings, pouring out of the water, the lighting and dancing, singing and music, blowing the trumpets, offerings and courses, the course yoga. Chapter I. 1. A booth which is above 20 cubits high is disallowed. Our Judah allows it. One which is not 10 hands high, one which has not 3 walls, or which has more sun than shade, is disallowed. An old booth? The school of Shammai disallow it. But the school of Hillel allow it. What is an old booth? One that was made 30 days before the feast, but if it were made with intention for the feast, even from the beginning of the year, it is allowed. 2. If a man make his booth beneath the tree, it is as though he made it in the house. If one booth be above another, the upper one is allowed, but the lower one is disallowed. Our Judah says, if they cannot inhabit the upper one, the lower one is allowed. 3. If one spread a cloth over its roof too, on account of the sun, or under its roof on account of the falling leaves, or if one spread a canopy over his bed, it is disallowed. But he may spread a cloth over 2 bedposts. 4. If one have trained a vine, or a gourd, or ivy, and covered it over, it is disallowed. But if the covering, P. 137, be larger than these, or if they have been trimmed, it is allowed. The rule is, everything which contracts uncleanness, and does not grow from the ground, must not be used for a covering. But everything which does not contract uncleanness, and grows from the ground, may be used for a covering. 5. Bundles of straw, and bundles of wood, and bundles of twigs, must not be used for covering. But all of them, if untied, are allowed. And all of them are allowed for side walls. 6. They may cover it with laths. The words of our Judah. But our mayor forbids it. If one put a board 4 hands wide over it, it is allowed, provided he do not sleep under it. 7. Rafters over which there is no ceiling? Our Judah says, the school of Shammai say, let him loosen them, and remove the middle one out of 3. But the school of Hillel say, he may either loosen them, or remove the middle one out of every 3. Our mayor says, he must remove the middle one out of every 3, but he need not loosen them. 8. If one roof in his booth with spits, or bedboards, if the intermediate spaces be equal to them, it is allowed. If one pile up loose sheaves to make a booth, it is no booth. 9. If one interweave with side walls from above downwards, if they be 3 handbreadths high from the ground, it is disallowed. If from the ground upwards they be 10 handbreadths high, it is allowed. Our Hosea says, even as from the ground upwards 10 handbreadths are required, so likewise from the roof downwards, 10 handbreadths are required. If the covering be 3 handbreadths above the side walls, it is disallowed. 10. If a house be unroofed and covered over, if there be a space of 4 cubits between the wall and the covering, it is disallowed. Also a court, in which there is an enclosed passage. If the large booth be enclosed with covering, which must not be used, and if there be below it a space of 4 cubits, it is disallowed. P. 138. 11. If one make his booth like a pyramid, or lean it against a wall, our Eliezer disallows it, because it has no roof. But the sages allow it. A large reed mat, which has been made for sleeping purposes. It contracts uncleanness, and they must not cover with it. If made for covering purposes, they may use it. And it contracts no uncleanness. Our Eliezer says, whether large or small, if made for sleeping, it contracts uncleanness, and must not be used for covering. But if made for covering, they may cover with it, and it contracts no uncleanness. Footnotes 136-1. According to Maimonides, we have in this treatise proof that it is coeval with the laws of Moses on the same subject. 136-2. The cloth would change it into a tent. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 2. 1. If one sleep under a bed in the booth, he has not discharged his duty. Our Judah said, we used to sleep under a bed before the elders, and they said nothing to us. Our Simon said, it happened that Tabby, the slave of Gamaliel, used to sleep under a bed, and Gamaliel said to the elders, you have seen my slave Tabby, he is a disciple of the sages, and knows that slaves are exempted from the booth, therefore he sleeps under a bedstead. From this we in our way infer that he who sleeps under a bed has not discharged his duty. 2. If a man support his booth with the posts of his bed, it is allowed. Our Judah says, a booth which cannot stand by itself, is disallowed. A booth, which is unequally covered, and its shade greater than its sunlight, is allowed. If the covering be thick like a house roof, even though the stars are not seen through it, it is allowed. 3. If one make his booth on the top of a wagon, or on a boat, it is allowed. And he may go up to it on the festival. If one make it on the top of a tree, or on the back of a camel, it is allowed, but he must not go up to it on the festival. 1. If 2 sides be formed by a tree, and 1 by the hands of man, or 2 by the hands of man and 1 by a tree, the booth is allowed, but he must not. P. 139. Go up to it on the festival. If 3 sides be formed by hands of man and the 4th by a tree, the booth is allowed, and he may go up to it on the festival. This is the rule: when, on the removal of the tree, it can stand by itself, the booth is allowed, and one may go up to it on the festival. 4. If one make his booth between trees, and the trees form side walls, the booth is allowed. Messengers on a pious errand are exempted from the booth. The sick and their attendants are exempted from the booth. Persons may occasionally eat or drink outside the booth. 5. It happened that they brought to Johanan, son of Zakkai, a dish to taste, and to Rabban Gamaliel 2 dates and a jar of water, and they said, "Bring them to the booth." But when they brought to Zadok food smaller than an egg, he took it in the napkin one, and ate it outside the booth, and he did not say a blessing after it. 6. Eliezer says, a man is bound to eat 14 meals in the booth, one by day and one by night. But the sages say the matter is not determined, except on the first night of the festival. Moreover, Eliezer said, he who has not taken his meal on the first night of the festival, may complete it on the last night of the festival. But the sages say that he must not complete it, and for this it is said, that which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting, cannot be numbered. 2. 7. If anyone's head, and the greater part of his body, be in the booth, and his table in the house, the school of Shammai disallow it. But the school of Hillel allow it. The school of Hillel said to the school of Shammai, did it not happen that the elders of the school of Shammai, and those of the school of Hillel, went to visit Johanan, son of Hakoni, and they found him sitting with his head and the greater part of his body in the booth while his table was in the house, and they said nothing to him? The school of Shammai said to them, is that a proof? Even the elders, p. 140, did say to him, if such has been thy custom, thou hast never in thy life fulfilled the commandment of the booth. 8. Women, slaves, and children, are exempted from the booth. A boy who no longer needs his mother is bound to the booth. It happened that the daughter-in-law of Shammai, the elder, one, gave birth to a son, and Shammai removed the ceiling and covered over her bed on account of the little one. 9. During the whole 7 days a man is to make the booth his regular dwelling, and to use his house only occasionally. If rain fall, when is it permitted to remove from it? When the porridge is spoiled. The elders illustrate this by an example, to what is the matter like? It is as if a servant pour out a cup for his master, who in return dashes a bowlful in his face. Footnotes. 138-1 But he may go up on the middle days of the feast. 139-1 Lest he should render the food legally unclean with his unwashen hands. Mark vi. 2, 5. 139-2 Eccles. I. 15. 140-1 He lived about 80 years before the destruction of the temple. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 3. 1. A palm branch stolen or withered is disallowed. 1 From an idolatrous grove, or from a city withdrawn to idolatry, 2, is disallowed. If the point be broken off, or the leaf torn off, it is disallowed. If they be only parted, it is allowed. Judah says, it must be tied together at the top. Short-leaved palms from the iron not free, are allowed. A palm branch measuring 3 hands, sufficient to shake it by, is allowed. 2. A myrtle bough stolen, or withered, is disallowed. 1 From an idolatrous grove, or from a city withdrawn to idolatry, is disallowed. If the point be broken off, or the leaves torn off, or if it have more berries than leaves, it is disallowed. But if the berries be lessened it is allowed. But they must not diminish them on the festival. 3. A willow of the brook stolen, or withered, is disallowed. 1 From an idolatrous grove, or from a town withdrawn to idolatry, is disallowed. If the point be broken off, or the leaf torn off, or if it be a mountain willow, it is disallowed. P. 141. Paragraph continues 1 Faded, or from which some leaves have dropped off, or which has grown on dry ground, is allowed. 4. Our Ishmael says, 3 myrtle boughs, 2 willows, 1 palm branch, and 1 citron, even if 2 out of the 3 myrtle boughs have their points broken off. Our Tarfin says, even if 3 have their points broken off. Our Akiva says, even as there is 1 citron and 1 palm branch, so there is 1 myrtle bough and 1 willow. 5. A citron stolen or withered is disallowed. 1 From an idolatrous grove, or from a city withdrawn to idolatry, is disallowed. 1 Off an uncircumcised tree 1, is disallowed. 1 From an unclean heave offering 2, is disallowed. From the clean heave offering 1 is not to take a citron, but if it be taken, it is allowed. 1 From what is doubtful as to payment of tithe. The school of Shammai disallow it, but the school of Hillel allow it. 1 is not to take a citron from the second tithe in Jerusalem, but if it be taken it is allowed. 6. If a stain spread over the greater part of the citron, if it have lost its crown, or its rind be peeled off, or if it be split, or bored, or if ever so little be wanting, it is disallowed. If a stain be spread over the smaller part of it, if it have lost its stalk, or if it be bored so that no part however small be wanting, it is allowed. A dusky citron is disallowed. A leek green one our Meyer allows, but our Judah disallows it. 7. What is the legal size of a small citron? Our Meyer says like a nut. Our Judah says like neck. And of a large citron? That one can hold 2 in his hand. The words of our Judah. But our Jose says, 1 if it must be held in 2 hands. 8. They must only tie the palm branch with its own kind. The words of our Judah. But our Meyer says even with twine. Our Meyer said, it happened that the men of Jerusalem tied their palm branches with gold thread. The sages said to him, underneath they tied them with their own kind. 9. When did they shake the palm branch? At the p. 142. Beginning and ending of O give thanks unto the Lord, 1, and at save now, I beseech thee, O Lord. 2. The words of the school of Hillel. But the school of Shammai say, also at O Lord, I beseech thee, send now prosperity. 3. Our Akiva said, I watched Rabban Gamaliel and our Joshua. And when all the people shook their palm branches, they only shook theirs at save now, I beseech thee. If one be on the road, and have no palm branch with him, he must, when he gets home, shake it at his table. If he have not done it in the morning, he must do it towards evening, as the whole day is allowed for the palm branch. 10. If the hymns 4 be read to a man by a slave, or a woman, or a child, 5, he must repeat after them what they read, but it is a disgrace 6, to him. If a grown-up man read it to him, he must repeat after him, Hallelujah. 11. In a place where it is the custom to repeat, 7, a man must repeat. To simply read, a man must simply read. To bless after the palm branch, a man must bless. In every case according to the custom of the country. If a person buy a palm branch from his neighbor during the sabbatical year, he must give him a citron as a gift, for it is not permitted to buy a citron during the sabbatical year. 12. At first the palm branch was used in the sanctuary 7 days, and in the country 1 day. But after the sanctuary was destroyed, our Johanan the son of Zakkai decreed, that in the country the palm branch should be used 7 days, in memory of the sanctuary. He at the same time also decreed, that on the day of the wage sheaf 8, it should be unlawful to eat new grain. 13. If the first day of the feast fall on the Sabbath, all the people are to bring their palm branches beforehand to the synagogue. In the morning they come early, and each man must distinguish his own palm branch, and take it, for the p. 143. Paragraph continues. Sages say, that a man cannot discharge his duty on the first day of the feast by means of his neighbor's palm branch, but on the other days of the feast he may discharge his duty by means of his neighbor's palm branch. 14. Our Jose says, if the first day of the feast fall on the Sabbath, and a man forget, and carry his palm branch out on the public common, he is absolved, because he carried it out with permission. 1. 15. A woman may receive the palm branch from the hand of her son, or of her husband, and put it back into water on the Sabbath. Our Judah says, on the Sabbath they may put it back. On the feast they may add water. And on the middle days they may change the water. A child who knows how to shake, is bound to shake a palm branch. Footnotes. 140-2 Deutsch. G. 13. 140-3 supposed to be the mountain east of the Dead Sea above Callirel. 141-1 Lev 23. 141-2 Num. XVII. 11, 12. 142-1 Psalm CXVII. 1. 142-2 Psalm CXVII. 25. 142-3 Psalm CXVII. 25. 142-4 Psalm CXII. To CXVII inclusive. 142-5 These as not being legally bound to this duty cannot act as deputies for another. 142-6 His ignorance of reading. 142-7 I will praise thee, etc. Psalm CXVII. 21-N. 142-11. XXII. 10, 11. 143-1 Permission arising out of his intention to fulfill the law. The Talmud, by Joseph Parkway, 1878. Chapter 4. 1. The palm branch and the willow were used for 6 days and for 7. The hymn, and the rejoicings, for 8 days. The booth and the pouring out of water for 7 days. And the musical pipes for 5 and for 6 days. 2. The palm branch was used for 7 days. How? When the first day of the feast fell on the Sabbath, the palm branch was used for 7 days. Otherwise all the days were 6. 3. The willow was used for 7 days. How? When the 7th day of the willow happened to fall on the Sabbath, the willow was used for 7 days. Otherwise all the days were 6. 4. How was the command for the palm branch when the first day of the feast fell on the Sabbath? They used to bring their palm branches to the mountain of the house, and the inspectors received them, and arranged them on a bench. But the elders placed theirs in a chamber. And the people were taught to say, "Whoever takes my palm branch in his p. 144. hand, be it his as a gift." On the morrow they came early, and the inspectors spread them before them. And they used to snatch them and hurt each other. When the Sanhedrin saw that persons were endangered, it was decreed that every man should take them home. 5. How was the command for the willow? There was a place below Jerusalem called Moza. 1. Thither the people went down and gathered drooping willow branches. And they came and erected them at the side of the altar, with their tops bending over the altar. They blew the trumpet, and sounded an alarm, and blew a blast. Every day they made one circuit round the altar, and said, "Save now, I beseech thee, O Lord. O Lord, I beseech thee, send now prosperity." Rabbi Judah said, "Save now, I beseech thee." 2. On the day itself 3, they made 7 circuits round the altar. As they withdrew, what did they say? "Beauty is thine, O altar. Beauty is thine, O altar." Our Eliezer said to the Lord, and to thee, O altar. To the Lord, and to thee, O altar. 6. As they did on the weekdays, so they did on the Sabbath, save that they gathered willow boughs on the Sabbath eve, and put them into vases of gold, that they might not fade. Our Joshua, son of Baroka, says, "They brought 8 branches, and thrashed them on the ground at the sides of the altar." Others say on the altar. And the day itself was called, the day for thrashing the branches. 7. Immediately the children threw down their palm branches, and ate their citrons. 8. The hymn and rejoicings were for 8 days. How? It is taught, that a man is bound to the hymn, and the rejoicings in honor of the last day of the feast, even as on its other days. How is the booth for 7 days? When a man has completed his eating, he is not to pull down his booth. But after the evening sacrifice he may remove his furniture in honor of the last day of the feast. P. 145. 9. How was the pouring out of the water? A golden pitcher holding 3 logs, one was filled from Siloam. When they came with it to the water gate, they blew the trumpet, an alarm, and a blast. The priest then went up the ascent to the altar, and turned to his left. 2 silver basins were there. Our Judah says, "They were of lime, but their look was dark from the wine. And they were bored with 2 narrow nostrils, one wider, the other narrower, that both might get empty at once. The one to the west was for the water. The other to the east was for the wine. But if the water was poured into the wine basin, or the wine into the water basin, it was allowed." Our Judah said, "They poured out 1 log on each of the 8 days." To him, who poured out, they said, "Lift your hand," for once it happened, that one poured over his feet, 2, and all the people pelted him to death with their citrons. 10. As they did on the weekdays, so they did on the Sabbath. Save that on the Sabbath even unconsecrated golden cask was filled from Siloam, and placed in a chamber. If it were spilt or uncovered, it was refilled from the laver, as water and wine which had been uncovered were disallowed on the altar. Footnotes. 144. One means a place exempt from taxation called Colman, perhaps the modern Colonia. Some, however, say it was a place in the Kedron Valley. 144-2 Deutsch. XXXII. 39. 144-3 The 7th day on which they used the willows. 145-1 A log is about half a pint. 145-2 He is said to have been a Sadducee who rejected tradition. Alexander Janus, to show his contempt for the Pharisees, poured the water on the ground. The people became excited, and pelted him with their etrogs or citrons till his bodyguard interfered, and, as fighting took place, some 6,000 Jews were killed in the temple. Josephus. Antic, Book G. Chap. G. 5. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 5. 1. The musical pipes were played for 5 and sometimes 6 days. That is to say, the pipes of the water drawing, which supersedes neither the Sabbath day nor the feast. The sages said, "He who has not seen the joy 3 of the water drawing, has never seen joy in his life." 2. With the departure of the first day of the feast, they went down into the women's court, and made great. P. 146. Preparations. 1. 4 golden candlesticks were there, and 4 golden basins on their tops, and 4 ladders to each candlestick, and 4 lads from the young priests, and in their hands were jars of oil containing 120 logs, with which they replenished each basin. 3. The cast-off breeches and belts of the priests were torn to wicks, which they lighted. And there was not a court in Jerusalem that was not lit up by the lights of the water drawing. 4. Pious and experienced men danced with lighted torches in their hands, singing hymns and lauds before them. And the Levites accompanied them with harps, psalteries, cymbals, trumpets, and numberless musical instruments. On the 15 steps which went down from the court of Israel into the women's court, corresponding with the 15 songs of degrees, 2, stood the Levites with their musical instruments, and sang. And at the upper gate, which went down from the court of Israel to the court of the women, stood 2 priests with trumpets in their hands. When the cock crew, they blew a blast, an alarm, and a blast. 3. When they reached the 10th step, they blew a blast, an alarm, and a blast. And when they got into the court, they blew a blast, an alarm, and a blast. They went on blowing as they went, until they reached the gate that leads out to the east. When they reached the gate that leads out to the east, they turned their faces westward, 4, and said, Our fathers, who were in this place, turned their backs upon the temple, and their faces towards the east, and worshipped the sun eastward. 5. Paragraph continues. Our Judah says, they repeat again and again. But we unto the Lord. To the Lord are our eyes. 6. P. 147. 5. In the sanctuary they did not blow the trumpet less than 21 times, nor oftener than 48 times. Every day they blew the trumpet 21 times, thrice at opening the gates, 9 times at the daily offering of the morning, and 9 times at the daily offering of the evening. When there were additional offerings they blew 9 times more. On the eve of the Sabbath they again blew 6 times. Thrice to interdict the people from work, and thrice to separate the holy from the ordinary day. But on the eve of the Sabbath during the feast they blew 48 times, thrice at the opening of the gates, thrice at the upper gate, thrice at the lower gate, thrice at the water drawing, thrice over the altar, 9 times at the daily offering of the morning, 9 times at the daily offering of the evening, 9 times at the additional offerings, thrice to interdict the people from work, and thrice to separate the holy from the ordinary day. 6. On the first day of the feast there were 13 bullocks, 2 rams, and 1 goat. There then remained 14 lambs for 8 courses of priests. 1. On the first day 6 courses offered 2 lambs each, and the other 2 courses 1 lamb each. On the second day 5 courses offered 2 lambs each, and the remaining 4 courses 1 lamb each. On the third day 4 courses offered 2 lambs each, and the remaining 6 1 lamb each. On the fourth day 3 courses offered 2 lambs each, and the remaining 8 1 lamb each. On the fifth day 2 courses offered 2 lambs each, and the remaining 10 1 lamb each. On the sixth day 1 course offered 2 lambs, and the remaining 12 1 lamb each. On the seventh day they were all equal. On the eighth day they cast lots, as on other feasts. They said that the order which offered bullocks today was not permitted to offer bullocks tomorrow. But they changed in rotation. 7. 3 times in the year all the courses shared alike in the offerings of the great feasts, and in the distribution of the P. 148. Showbread. In the solemn assembly 1, they say to each priest, Here is unleavened bread for thee, and here is leavened for thee. The course in regular succession offered the daily sacrifices, vows, and freewill offerings, and all the other sacrifices and services of the congregation. If a feast be next to the Sabbath, either before or after it, all the courses shared alike in the distribution of the showbread. 8. But if a day intervened between the two, the course in regular succession took 10 loaves, and the loiterers too, took 2. At other times of the year, the course entering on duty took 6 loaves, and the course going off duty took 6. Our Judah says, the course entering took 7, and that going off took 5. Those entering shared them on the north side of the temple court, and those going out on the south side. The course Bilgah always shared theirs on the south side. But their slaughtering was fastened down, and the window of their closet was shut up. 3. Footnotes. 145 to 3 Isaiah Z. 3. John by 37, 38. 146 to 1 galleries were erected for the women, and the men stood below them. 146 to 2 Psalms CXX to CXXXIV inclusive. 146 to 3 the signal for drawing water. 146 to 4 the Orthodox worshippers in the temple looked towards the west, or Holy of Holies. The Baal or sun worshippers turned towards the east, and used the eastward position. Under the Christian dispensation believers are directed to look to Jesus, who promises to be in their midst. Matt. XVII. 20. 146 to 5 Ezekiel 80. 16. 146 to 6 This is one of the very few specimens of Hebrew poetry, apart from scripture dating prior to the destruction of the temple which have come down to us. 147 to 1 The priesthood was divided into 24 courses 1 from XXIV. 719. During the feast all the courses ministered, and, as each day the number of bullocks was decreased by 1, the lambs were redistributed so as to supply an offering for every course. 148 to 1 In the Feast of Weeks there were 2 leavened wave loaves lev. XXII. 17. 148 to 2 those priests who were slow in attendance, as they were obliged to share their perquisites with the whole priesthood. 148. 3 the course bilga was 15th when crown. XXIV. 14. Each course had a ring to which the heads of the victims were tied, and also a closet for stores. These were taken from the course bilga as a mark of disgrace. During the persecution of Antiochus, Miriam, a daughter of Bilga, married a Syro-Grecian husband. When the Greeks took the temple, she struck the altar with her shoe, exclaiming, "O wolf, wolf, how long art thou to consume the wealth of Israel, and canst not preserve them in their hour of need?" It was supposed that she must have learned something evil in her father's house, and the whole course was therefore degraded. The rabbis say that the courses of the priests were first ordained by Moses, and that he established 8 of them. 4 courses he assigned to the line of Eleazar, and 4 he assigned to the line of Ithamar. Samuel is said to have added 8 courses more, and the remaining 8 were added by David. The scriptures, however, assert that David arranged the whole 24 courses. This arrangement continued till the captivity. After the captivity only 4 courses returned, namely Judea, Aram, Pashur, and Immer. The Babylon Talmud mentions Jodarib instead of Haram. To restore again the number of courses, 24 lots were cast into a box, and each head of the 4 courses, which returned, drew 6 lots, 1 for himself, and 5 for the courses which they wished to revive. The restored order of courses continued as of old, except in the case of Jodarib, who yielded the first rank to Judea, as Judea was of the family of the high priest Joshua, the son of Josdick. They soon increased in numbers, and we read that each course kept a station of 2,400 priests at Jerusalem, and half a station at Jericho. The lesser number was stationed at Jericho to give honor to Jerusalem. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. P. 149. Treatise 7. For New Year's, judgments, new moon, witnesses, evidence, Samaritans, spreading the news Ganga, examining witnesses, Rabbi Gamaliel's plan of the phases of the moon, Rabbi Joshua, Sanhedrin, cornets and trumpets, intention, the serpent of brass, Jerusalem and Jamnia, blessings, texts of scripture, how the trumpets are to be blown. Chapter I. 1. There are 4 New Years. The first of Nisan 1 is a new year for kings and for festivals. 2. The first of Elul 3 is a new year for the tithing of cattle. But our Eleazar and our Simeon say, it is on the first of Tishri. 4. The first of Tishri is a new year for civil years, for years of release, and for jubilees, also for planting of trees 5, and herbs. The first of Sabbath 6 is a new year for the tithing of trees according to the school of Shammai, but the school of Hillel say, on its 15th. 2. The world is judged at 4 periods, at the Passover, for the growth of corn. At Pentecost, for the fruit of trees. At New Year's Day, when all human beings pass before him like lambs, as is said, he fashioneth their hearts alike. He considereth all their works. 7. And at the Feast of Tabernacles, judgment is given for the rains. 3. Messengers went forth from Jerusalem in 6 months, in Nisan for the Passover. In Ab 8, for the fast. In Elul for the New Year. In Tishri for the regulation of the feasts. In P. 150. Paragraph continues Kislev 1, for the dedication. In Adar 2, for the Feast of Lots. And also in Iyar 3, during the existence of the temple for the little Passover. 4. For 2 months 4, they may profane the Sabbath, for Nisan and for Tishri, because in them the messengers went forth to Syria, and in them they regulated the feasts. And during the existence of the temple they might profane it in all the months for the regulation of the offerings. 5. If the moon 5 appeared high and clear, or did not appear high and clear, the witnesses may profane the Sabbath on account of it. Our Jose says, if it appeared high and clear, they may not profane the Sabbath on account of it. 6. It happened that more than 40 pairs of witnesses were passing through, when our Akiva detained them in Lydda. Rabbi Gamaliel said to him, if thou thus detainest the people, it will be a stumbling block in the future. 7. When father and son have seen the new moon, they must go before the Sanhedrin, not that they may be combined together, but in order that, should the evidence of either of them be disallowed, the other may be combined with another witness. Our Simeon says, father, and son, and relatives in every degree, may be allowed as competent witnesses for the new moon. Our Jose says, it happened that Tobias, the physician, his son, and his freed slave, saw the new moon in Jerusalem, and the priests accepted his evidence, and that of his son, but disallowed his slave. But when they came before the Sanhedrin, they accepted him and his slave, but disallowed his son. 8. These witnesses are disallowed, gamblers with dice, usurers. 6. Pigeon breeders. 7. Traders and produce of the sabbatical. P. 151. Year, and slaves. This is the rule. All evidence that cannot be received from a woman cannot be received from any of these. 9. He who has seen the new moon but cannot walk? They must bring him on an ass or even in a bed. Those afraid of being waylaid may take sticks in their hands, and if they have a long way to go, they may take provisions. If they must be a day and a night on the road, they may profane the Sabbath in traveling to testify for the new moon. As is said, these are the feasts of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. 1. Footnotes 149 to 1 is an answer to part of March and April. The reign of kings was counted from this month, so that if a king began to reign in Adar, February and March in the following dozen, he would be reckoned to have reigned 2 years. 149 to 2 The Passover was the first of the 3 feasts, beyond which one could not neglect a vow. 149 to 3 Part of August and September. 149 to 4 Part of September and October. 149 to 5 Lev 6. 23-25. 149 to 6 Part of January and February. 149 to 7 Psalm XXXII. 15. 149 to 8 Part of July and August. 150 to 1 Part of November and December. 150 to 2 Part of February and March. 150 to 3 Part of April and May. 150 to 4 that is, for the new moon observances. 150 to 5 The Talmud states that when the sun and moon were first created they were of equal size. The moon became jealous of the sun, and she was reduced in bulk. The moon then appealed to God, and she was consoled by the promise that Jacob, Samuel, and David were to be likewise small. As, however, some injustice seemed to have been committed, God ordained a sin offering on every new moon, because the moon had become less than the sun. 150 to 6 The Sanhedrin treated gamblers and usurers as thieves. 150 to 7 Those who bred pigeons, to bet on their quickness of flight, or to entice their neighbors' pigeons to their dovecotes. 151 to 1 Lev. XXII. 4. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 2. 1. If a witness were unknown, another was sent to testify to him. At first they received evidence of the new moon from anyone. But when the heretics too bribed the witnesses, they ordained that evidence should only be received from those who were known. 2. At first high flames were lighted, but when the Samaritans mimicked them, it was ordained that messengers should be sent forth. 3. How were these high flames lighted? They brought long staves of cedar wood, canes, and branches of the olive tree, and the tow of flax, which was tied with twine. And one went to the top of the mountain and lighted them, and waved the flame to and fro, up and down, till he could perceive his companion doing so on the second mountain, and so on the third mountain, etc. 4. And where were these high flames lighted? From the Mount of Olives to Sartaba. From Sartaba to Grafana. From Grafana to Hebron. From Hebron to Bethalton. There they did not cease to wave them to and fro, up and down, till the whole country of the captivity 3 looked like torches of fire. P. 152. 5. There was a large court in Jerusalem called Beth Yanzek. 1. There all the witnesses met, and there the Sanhedrin examined them. And they made great feasts for them, that they might come often. At first they did not stir from thence all day. 2. Rabbi Gamaliel the elder ordained, that they might go 2,000 cubits on every side. And not only they, but the midwife going to a birth. And they who go to rescue from fire, or from enemies, or from inundation, or from falling buildings. These are as inhabitants of the place, and they have 2,000 cubits on every side. 6. How did they examine the witnesses? The first pair which came were examined first, and they brought in the eldest of them, and they said to him, Tell us how you saw the moon her horns towards the sun, or away from the sun? To the north, or to the south? What was her altitude? Towards where her declination? And what was her breadth? If he said towards the sun, he said nothing. Afterwards they brought in the second and examined. If the evidence was found to agree, the evidence stood. The remaining pairs of witnesses were then superficially examined, not because there was necessity for their evidence, but not to discourage them, that they might be willing to come again. 7. The chief of the Sanhedrin said, The feast is sanctified. And all the people answered after him, Sanctified, sanctified. Whether the new moon had been seen in its season, or not, they sanctified it. Eliezer, son of Zadok, said, If it were not seen in its season, they did not sanctify it, for heaven had already sanctified it. 8. Rabbi Gamaliel had on a tablet and on the wall of his chamber figures and phases of the moon which he showed to ignorant witnesses, and said, Was it like this you saw her, or like that? It happened once that 2 witnesses came, and said, We saw the moon in the morning in the east, and in the evening in the west. Said Arjohani, son. P. 153. Of Neri, they are false witnesses, but when they came to Jamnia, Rabbi Gamaliel received their evidence. 2 other witnesses came, and said, We saw the moon in her season, but on the next evening of the intercalary day she was invisible, and Gamaliel received them. Said Arjosa, son of Archelaus, they are false witnesses, for how can they testify of a woman being delivered, and on the morrow she is still pregnant? To him said Arjoshua, I approve thy words. 9. Rabbi Gamaliel said to Arjoshua, I order thee to come to me with thy staff and money on the day of atonement, according to thy reckoning. 1. Arakiva went to Arjoshua, and found him sorrowing. He said to him, I can prove that all Rabbi Gamaliel has done is well done, for it is said, These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons, 2, or out of their seasons. I have no other feasts but these. Arjoshua came to Ardos, son of Archanaz. He said to him, If we are to judge the tribunal of Rabban Gamaliel, we must also judge the tribunals which have existed from the days of Moses till now, for it is said, Then went up Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. 3. And why were not the names of the elders mentioned, but to inform us that every 3 men in Israel who compose a tribunal, are as a tribunal of Moses? Arjoshua took his staff and money in his hand, and went to Jamnia to Rabban Gamaliel on the day when the atonement began, according to his reckoning. Rabban Gamaliel stood up and kissed him on his head, saying to him, Come in peace, my master and disciple, my master in wisdom, my disciple in obeying my words. Footnotes 151-2 leaders Bethosan, the followers of Biothas, who, with Zadok, the founder of the Sadducees, was a scholar of Antigonus of Socco. 151-3 Babylon. 152-1 so-called in the Mishnah. It means the place fenced in the Gemara reads, Beth Yazak, the place of chains. 152-2 that is the Sabbath, when they could only go 4 cubits. 153, 1 to carry money on the day of atonement was unlawful, but according to Arjoshua's reckoning it would have been a day too late. 153-2 Lev. XXII. 4. 153-3 Exod. XXIV. 9. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 3. 1. The Sanhedrin and all Israel saw the new moon. The witnesses were examined, but it became dark before they. P. 154. Could say, sanctified? The month is intercalary. The Sanhedrin alone saw it. 2 members must stand up and testify before them, and they shall say, sanctified, sanctified. 3 composing a Sanhedrin saw it. 2 of them must stand up, and their assessors must be seated with a single member, and before them they shall testify, and say, sanctified, sanctified, because an individual cannot be trusted by himself alone. 2. All cornets are allowed, except horns of a heifer. 1. Because it is written horn. 2. Said Rabbi Jose, are not all cornets called horn? For it is said, when they shall make a long blast with the ram's horn. 3. 3. The cornet of the new year was a straight horn of a wild goat, and its mouthpiece was plated with gold. And the 2 trumpets were stationed on each side. The cornet prolonged its note when the trumpets ceased, because the obligation of the day was for the cornet. 4. On fast days there were crooked ram's horns, and their mouthpieces were plated with silver. And the 2 trumpets were stationed in the midst. The cornet ceased, and the trumpets prolonged their notes, because the obligation of the day was for the trumpets. 5. The Jubilee is like the new year for the sounding and the blessings. Arjuda says, on the new year they sounded ram's horns, and on the Jubilee wild goat's horns. 6. A cornet, which was rent and cemented, is disallowed. One cemented from fragments of cornets is disallowed. It had a hole, which was closed. If it hinder the sound, it is disallowed. But if not, it is allowed. 7. If one sound a cornet within a pit, a cistern, or in an earthenware vessel, and one outside hears the sound of the cornet, he is free. 5. But if he hear the echo of the sound, he is not free. And so, if one be passing behind a synagogue, or his house adjoin the synagogue, and he hear the sound of the cornet, or the reading of the roll out, he. 155. Paragraph continues Esther, he is legally free, provided he heard it with due attention. But if not, he is not legally free. Although one hears as well as another, yet one hears with hearty intention, and another without hearty intention. 8. And it came to pass, when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed, 1, etc. And how could the hands of Moses make the battle, or crush the battle? But it is written to tell thee that whilst Israel looked to heaven for aid, and subjected their hearts to their heavenly Father, they prevailed. And when they did not do so, they were defeated. Like as he says, make thee a fiery serpent, and set it upon a pole, and it shall come to pass that every one that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live. 2. And how could the serpent kill, or make alive? But when the Israelites looked to heaven for aid, and subjected their hearts to their heavenly Father, they were healed. And when they did not do so, they perished. One deaf and dumb, or an idiot, or a child, cannot, as proxies, free others from their obligations. This is the rule. All who are not responsible for a thing cannot free others from their obligations. Footnotes 154-1 Not to remind God of the sin of the golden calf. 154-2 Deutsch. XXXII. 17. 154-3 Josh Vi. 5. 154-4 Num. X. 154-5 From the obligation of hearing or sounding. 155-1 Exod. XVII. 11. 155-2 Num. XXI. 8. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 4. 1. When the Feast of New Year happened on the Sabbath, they used to sound the cornet in the sanctuary, but not in the provinces. After the destruction of the sanctuary, Arjochanan, son of Zakkai, decreed that they should sound it in every place in which there is a tribunal of justice. Our Eliezer says, Arjochanan, son of Zakkai, decreed it only for Jamnia. But the sages said to him, it was all one for Jamnia, and all one for every place in which there is a tribunal of justice. 2. And again, 3. Jerusalem was privileged above Jamnia. P. 156. Because every city which could be seen, and the sounding heard, and which was near, and to which it was allowed to go, might sound the cornet. But in Jamnia they could only sound it before the tribunal of justice. 3. At first the palm branch was taken 7 days in the sanctuary, and 1 day in the provinces. After the destruction of the temple, Arjochanan, son of Zakkai, decreed that the palm branch should be taken in the provinces for 7 days, to commemorate the sanctuary. Also that the whole day of the waving one, it should be forbidden to eat new corn. 4. At first they received evidence of the new moon during the whole 30th day. But once the witnesses delayed coming, and the Levites erred in the chant, they decreed that they should receive evidence only till the time of the evening sacrifice. And if witnesses came after the evening sacrifice, that and the next day were kept holy. After the destruction of the sanctuary, Rabban Jochanan, son of Zakkai, decreed that they should receive evidence of the new moon during the whole day. Our Joshua, son of Korka, says, and again Rabban Jochanan, son of Zakkai, decreed that wherever the chief of the Sanhedrin might be, the witnesses need only go to the place of its meeting. 5. The order of blessings to be said on the new year is, the fathers, 2, and the mighty, and sanctification of the name, and there are comprehended the kingdoms without blowing the trumpet. The holiness of the day, and he blows. The remembrances, and he blows. The trumpets, and he blows. And he says, the service, the confession, and blessing of the priests. The words of Arjochanan, son of Neri. Said Akiva to him, if the trumpet be not blown after the kingdoms, why are they mentioned? But the order is, the fathers, and the mighty, and sanctification of the name, and there are comprehended the kingdoms. P. 157. Of the day, and he blows. The remembrances, and he blows. The trumpets, and he blows. And he says, the service, the confession, and blessing of the priests. 6. They cannot read less than 10 texts of scripture relating to the kingdom, 10 relating to remembrances, and 10 to trumpets. 1. Arjochanan, son of Neri, says, if we be read from all of them, the duty is fulfilled, but they mention not the remembrance of the kingdom, and trumpet of vengeance. 2. They must begin with the law and end with the prophets. Our Hosea says, if they end with the law, the duty is fulfilled. 7. The minister of the congregation must go over to the reading desk on the feast of the New Year. The second minister must blow the trumpet. But at the hour for the hymn the first must read the hymn. 8. For sounding the trumpet of the New Year they may not transgress the sabbatical limit, they may not remove for it a heap of stones, they may not climb a tree, and they may not ride a beast, or swim over water. Nor may they cut a tree, with anything that violates the sabbatical rest, or violates a negative command. But if one wish he may pour into it water or wine. 4. They may not prevent children from blowing, but they may practice in teaching them. But he who practices blowing is not freed from his obligation, and he who listens to the practice is not freed from his obligation. 9. The order of blowing the trumpet is, 3 blasts blown thrice. The measure of the blast is as 6 alarms. The measure of the alarm is as 3 shrieks. If one blew the first and prolonged the blast for the second to be as 2, it reckons but as 1. He who has said the blessings, and afterwards a trumpet is given to him, must blow a blast, an alarm, and a blast 3 times. As the minister of the congregation is bound, so is each individual bound. Our Gamaliel says, the minister of the congregation releases the public from their obligations. Footnotes 155-3 There is a supposed hiatus in the Mishnah text to the following effect. In Jerusalem they sounded through the whole city during the session of the Sanhedrin, that is till noon. But in Jamnia they did not sound in the city, but only before the tribunal of justice. And again, etc. 156 to 1, that is of the sheaf of the first fruits. XXII. 10. 156 to 2, the titles or the headings of the blessings which were used in the services of the temple and of the synagogues out of Jerusalem. 157 to 1, 3 were read from the law, 3 from the Psalms, and 3 from the prophets, such passages as Exod XV. 18. PSXXIV, Ezek XX. 33, Zek. Ziv. 9, etc. 157 to 2, that is. They would not read such passages as TS. 39. 157 to 3, that is to improve its tone. 157, 4 to clear its tone. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. P. 158. Treatise 8. When rain is to be prayed for, proclamations for fasting, ceremonial of fasting, prayers, blowing of trumpets, Argamaliel and Ormire, sign of famine, partial rain, pestilence, story of Hon-Hanegal, lifting up of hands, deputies, bringing wood, 5 things happened in Tammuz and 5 in Ab, mortifications, rejoicings. Chapter I. 1. When do we remember in prayer the heavy rain? Rabbi Eliezer said, from the first holiday of the Feast of Tabernacles. Rabbi Joshua said, from the last holiday of the feast. To him said Rabbi Joshua, when the rain is no mark of blessing in the feast, why should one remember it? Said Rabbi Eliezer to him, even I did not say to ask for it, but to remember the blowing of the wind, and the descent of the rain in its season. He replied to him, if so, one can remember it always. 2. We ask for rain only near to the season of rains. Rabbi Judah said, 1. He who passes last before the ark on the last holiday of the Feast of Tabernacles remembers it. The first does not remember it. On the first holiday of the Passover the first remembers it, the last does not remember it. How long do we ask for rain? Rabbi Judah said, till the Passover be ended. Rabbi Meir said, till Nisan depart. 2. As is said, 3. And he will cause to come down for you the rain, the former rain, and the latter rain in the first month. 3. On the 3rd day of March has been 4, we ask for the rain. Rabbi Gamaliel said, on the 7th, 15 days after the P. 159. Feast, that the last Israelite returning home from the feast may reach the river Euphrates. 4. If the 17th day of March has been arrived, and the rain does not come down, men of eminence begin to fast for 3 days. They may eat and drink by night. And they may work, and wash, and anoint themselves, and put on their sandals, and use their couches. 5. If the first day of the month Chislev 1 arrive, and the rain does not come down, the tribunal proclaims 3 fast days too, for the congregation. Persons may, however, eat and drink by night. And they may work, and wash, and anoint themselves, and put on their sandals, and use their couches. 6. If these days pass over, and there be no answer, the tribunal proclaims 3 other fast days for the congregation. Persons may, however, eat and drink while it is still day. But they are forbidden work, and washing, and anointing, and putting on sandals, and the use of the couch. And the baths are locked up. If these days pass over, and there be no answer, the tribunal proclaims for them 7 more. These are altogether 13 fast days for the congregation. And what are these fast days more than the first 6? Because during them men blow with the trumpets and lock up their shops. On Monday they can half open them at dark. But on Thursday they may open them for honor to the approaching Sabbath. 7. If these days pass over, and there be no answer, people diminish business, building, planting, betrothals and marriages, and salutations of peace between man and his friend, as children of men ashamed before omnipresence. The men of eminence have again recourse to fasting, till Nisan be ended. If Nisan be ended, and the rain comes down, it is a mark of cursing, as is said, 3. Is it not wheat harvest today? Etc. Footnotes. 158 to 1, that is. The Chazin that praise Musaf. 158 to 2 Nisan corresponded partly to March and April. 158 to 3 Joel 23. 158 to 4 March has been corresponded partly to October and November. 159 to 1 part of November and part of December. 159 to 2 The fast days of strict Pharisees were Mondays and Thursdays, because on a Thursday Moses went up to Mount Sinai, and returned on a Monday with the second tables of the law. 159 to 3 1 Sam v. 17. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. P. 160. Chapter 2. 1. What is the order of the fast days? Men draw up the ark containing the rolls of the law to the public street of the city, and they put burnt ashes on the top of the ark, and on the head of the prince, and on the head of the president of the tribunal, and everyone takes and puts ashes on his own head. The most aged of them says before them touching words, Brethren, it is not said for the men of Nineveh, and God saw their sackcloth and their fasting. 1. But God saw their works, that they returned from their evil way. And in the tradition of the prophet he says to, Rend your hearts and not your garments, and turn unto the Lord your God. 2. When they stood in prayer, they placed before the ark an aged man and full of experience, one who had children and an unblemished house, that his heart be not distracted in prayer. And he says before them 24 blessings, the usual 18 for every day, and he adds to them 6 more. 3. These are they, remembrances. 3. And blowing of the trumpets. 3. In my distress I cried unto the Lord, and he heard me. 4. I will lift up my eyes unto the hills. 5. Out of the depths have I cried unto thee, O Lord. 6. A prayer of the afflicted when he is overwhelmed. 7. Rabbi Judah says, It was not necessary to say the remembrances, and the trumpets, but he said instead of them, If there be in the land famine, if there be pestilence, 8, etc. The word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah concerning the dearth. 9. And he said their closing benediction. 4. For the first additional prayer he said, He who answered Abraham our father on Mount Moriah, he shall answer you, and hear the voice of your cry this day. Blessed be thou, Lord, the Redeemer of Israel. For the second he said, He who answered our fathers by the Red. He. 161. See, he will answer you, and hear the voice of your cry this day. Blessed be thou, Lord, who rememberest those forgotten by man. For the third he said, He who answered Joshua in Gilgal, he will answer you, and hear the voice of your cry this day. Blessed be thou, Lord, who hearest the blowing of the trumpet. For the fourth he said, He who answered Samuel in Mizpah, he will answer you, and hear the voice of your cry this day. Blessed be thou, Lord, who hearest the cry of distress. For the fifth he said, He who answered Elijah on Mount Carmel, he will answer you, and hear the voice of your cry this day. Blessed be thou, Lord, who hearest prayer. For the sixth he said, He who answered Jonah from the fish's belly, he will answer you, and hear the voice of your cry this day. Blessed be thou, Lord, who art ever answering prayer in the time of need. For the seventh he said, He who answered David and Solomon his son in Jerusalem, he will answer you, and will hear the voice of your cry this day. Blessed be thou, Lord, who hast pity on the earth. 5. It happened in the days of Rabbi Chelpitha and Arshnaniah, son of Teradium, that a minister passed before the ark, and finished the whole blessing, and the congregation did not answer after him, Amen. One cried out, Let the priests blow the trumpets. They blew. The minister prayed, May he who answered Abraham our father on Mount Moriah answer you, and hear the voice of your cry this day. One cried out, Let the sons of Aaron blow an alarm. They blew an alarm. The minister prayed, May he who answered our fathers by the Red Sea, answer you, and hear the voice of your cry this day. And when the matter came before the sages they said it was not customary to do so, save in the eastern gate and on the mountain of the house. 6. These are the first 3 fasts. The priests of the weekly watch of the temple fasted, but not completely. And the priests of their father's house 1, did not fast at all. P. 162. Paragraph continues in the second 3 fasts the men of the watch fasted completely. And the men of their father's house fasted, but not completely. In these 7 last fasts both of them fasted completely. The words of Rabbi Joshua. But the sages say, in the 3 first fasts neither one nor other fasted at all. In these second 3 fasts the priests of the watch fasted, but not completely. And the priests of their father's house did not fast at all. In these 7 last fasts the priests of the watch fasted completely, and the priests of their father's house fasted, but not completely. 7. The men of the watch are allowed to drink wine by night, but not by day, and the men who inherit the patrimony of their fathers 1, may not drink it neither by day nor night. The men of the watch and the delegates too, are not allowed to shave, nor wash, except on Thursdays for the honor of the approaching Sabbath. 8. That which is written in the roll of fasting. 3. Not to mourn on certain days, the day before them it is not allowed, the day after them it is allowed to mourn. Rabbi Jose said, both before and after the day it is not allowed. But when it is written, not to fast, both the day before and the day after the fast, it is allowed to fast. Rabbi Jose said, before the fast it is not allowed, after the fast it is allowed. 9. The rulers must not proclaim fasts for the congregation to begin on Thursday, so as not to raise the market. But the 3 first fasts are Monday, Thursday, and Monday. And the 3 second, Thursday, Monday, and Thursday. Rabbi Jose said, as the first fasts are not to begin on Thursday, so likewise the second and the last are not to begin on that day. 10. The rulers must not proclaim fasting for the congregation on the feast of New Moon, and on the feasts of dedication. P. 163. And Purim. But if they have already begun, they need not cease. The words of Rabbi Gamaliel. said Armire, even though Rabbi Gamaliel said they need not cease, he admits that the congregation do not fast the whole day. And so also on the 9th of Av, the fast for the burning of the temple, if it happened on the eve of the Sabbath. Footnotes. 160-1 Jonah E. 10. 160-2 Joel E. 13. 160-3 Prayers for the New Year. 160-4 Psalms CXX. I. 160-5 Psalms CXXI. I. 160-6 Psalms CXXX. 160-7 Psalms C. 160-8 1 Kings B. 37. 160-9 Jeter Ziv. I. 161-1 Some understand the priests ministering in their course, others explain this expression by Joy. XVIII. 8. The priests were divided into 24 p. 162 watches. Each watch ministered for a week in the temple. These watches were again subdivided into 7 fathers' houses, and each father's house officiated for a day in the temple. A dispensation from fasting was granted to the priests on duty, that they might not be weak by the service of the sanctuary. 162-1 This means the officiating priests. 162-2 The delegates were the representatives of the congregation, who attended at the public sacrifices, and prayed on their behalf. 162-3 This was a book written in Chaldee, as is proved by the quotations from it. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 3. 1. The order of these fasts is said only for the first rains. But if the sprouts wither, men blow an alarm offhand. And if the rain cease between rain and rain 40 days, men blow an alarm offhand. Because it is a sign of famine. 2. If the rain came down for the sprouts, but did not come down for the trees, but not for the sprouts, for both these, but not for the wells, pits, and caves, men must blow an alarm for them offhand. 3. And so also for the city, on which the rain did not come down, as is written, 1, And I caused it to rain upon one city, and caused it not to rain upon another city. One piece was rained upon, and the piece whereupon it rained not withered. This city fasts and blows an alarm, and all its neighboring cities fast, but do not blow alarms. Arachibus said, They blow alarms, but do not fast. 4. And so for a city, in which there is pestilence, or falling of buildings, that city fasts and blows an alarm, and all the neighboring cities fast, but do not blow an alarm. Rabbi Akiba said, They blow alarms, but do not fast. What is pestilence? A city containing 500 men, and there go forth from it 3 dead in 3 days, one after the other. This is pestilence, less than this is not pestilence. 5. For these things men blow an alarm in every place, for the blasting and for the blighting, for the locust and for the caterpillar, and for the evil beast, and for the sword, they blow an alarm over them, because it is a spreading wound. 6. It happened that the elders went down from Jerusalem. P. 164. To their cities, and proclaimed fasting, because the blasting appeared, as much as would fill an oven, in Askelon. And again they proclaimed a fast, because the wolves devoured 2 children beyond Jordan. Rabbi Jose said, not because they devoured them, but because the wolves were seen. 7. For these things men blow an alarm on the Sabbath, for a city, encompassed by Gentiles, or by a flood, and for a ship tossed in the sea. Rabbi Jose said, for help, but not for a cry of distress. Simon the Temanite said, also for pestilence, but the sages did not admit it. 8. For all distress, may it not come on the congregation, men sound an alarm, except for too much rain. It happened that they said to Hon Hamigel, Pray that the rain come down. He said to them, Go and bring in the Passover ovens, that they be not dissolved. He prayed, but the rain did not come down. What did he do? He dug a hole and stood in it, and said before Him, Our Lord of the world, Thy sons have turned towards me, because I am a son of the house in Thy presence. I am sworn in Thy great name, that I move not from hence, till Thou have pity on Thy children. The rain began to drop. He said, I did not ask it thus, but rains for wells, pits, and caves. The rain began to descend with storm. He said, I did not ask it thus, but reasonable rain, with blessing and free will. The showers came down as they ought, until all Israel went up from Jerusalem to the Mount of Olives on account of the rains. They came and said to him, As thou hast prayed that the rain should come down, so pray that they may depart. He said to them, Go and see if the stone of proclamation 1 be covered. Simon the son of Shadach sent to him word, If thou wert not home, I would excommunicate thee. But what shall I do to thee, since thou criest before omnipresence, and he does thy will, as a son who plays upon his father, and he does his will? And for thee the scripture says, Thy father and thy mother shall be glad, and she that bare thee shall rejoice. 2. P. 165. 9. If men were fasting, and the rain came down for them before the sun rose, they need not complete the day. If the rains came down after sunrise, they must complete it. R. Eliezer said, before noon they need not complete it, if after noon they must complete it. It happened that the rulers proclaimed a fast in Lydda, and the rain came down in the forenoon. Said R. Tarfon, go and eat, and drink, and make holiday. They went and ate and drank, and made holiday, and they came in the evening and read the great thanksgiving. 1. Footnotes. 163 to 1 Amos Iv. 7. 164 to 1 A stone on which lost property was deposited, and publication of it was made, so that its owner might reclaim it. 164 to 2 Prov. XXII. 25. 165 to 1 Psalm CXXXVI. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 4. 1. 3 times in the year the priests elevate their hands to bless the people, 4 times a day, in the morning prayer, in the following prayer, in the evening prayer, and at the locking of the gates. These times are the fast days, on the fasts of the deputies, and on the day of atonement. 2. These are the delegates, according as is said, command the children of Israel, and say unto them, my offering and my bread for my sacrifice is made by fire. 2. And how is it possible, that the offering of a man should be sacrificed, and he does not stand by it? Therefore the former prophets decreed 24 watches. For every watch there were delegates in Jerusalem of priests, Levites, and Israelites. When the time approached for them to go up, the priests and Levites went up to Jerusalem, and the Israelites, who belonged to the watch, gathered in their cities and read in the history of Genesis. 3. And the delegates used to fast 4 days in the week, from the 2nd day till the 5th. But they did not fast on the eve of the Sabbath, for honor to the Sabbath, nor on the first day, that they should not go forth from repose and enjoyment, to toil, and fasting, and death. On the first day they read in Genesis 3, and let there be a firmament. On the second, let there be a firmament and let the waters be gathered together. On the third day, let the waters be. P. 166. Gather together, and let there be lights. On the fourth, let there be lights, and let the waters bring forth abundantly. On the fifth, let the waters bring forth abundantly, and let the earth bring forth. On the sixth, let the earth bring forth, and the heavens were finished. 2 men read a large portion, but a small portion was read by one. At morning prayer, at the following prayer, at the evening prayer, they went in and read orally by heart, as they read the here, 1, etc. On the eve of the Sabbath they did not go into evening prayer for honor to the Sabbath. 4. Every day when there is praise, the delegates are not at morning prayer. When there is the additional offering at the following prayer, there is not the closing prayer at the locking up of the gates. When there is the offering of the wood, there is not the evening prayer. The words of Rabbi Akiva, the son of Uzziah, said to him, Our Joshua thus taught it, when there was an additional offering, the delegates did not come to evening prayer. When there was the offering of the wood, they did not come to prayer at the locking up of the gates. Our Akiva changed his opinion, and taught as the son of Uzziah. 5. The times of bringing wood for the altar by priests and people were 9. On the 1st of Nisan, 2, the children of Barak son of Judah brought it. On the 20th of Tammuz, 3, the children of David the son of Judah brought it. On the 5th of Ab, 4, the children of Perhush the son of Judah brought it. On the 7th, the children of Jonadab the son of Rechab brought it. On the 10th, the children of Sinah the son of Benjamin brought it. On the 15th, the children of Zaphnath the son of Judah brought it, and with them the priests and Levites and all who were ignorant of their tribe. And the children of Benabel Eli 5, and the children of Kozi Keziah. On the 20th, the children of Hashath Moab the son of Judah brought it. On the P. 167. 20th of Elul, 1, the children of Adin the son of Judah brought it. On the 1st of Tebeth, the children of Perhush returned the 2nd time. On the 1st of Tebeth, 2, there was no meeting of the delegates, as there was on it the praise, and the additional offering at the following prayer, and the offering of the wood. 6. 5 things happened to our fathers on the 17th of Tammuz, and 5 on the 9th of Ab. On the 17th of Tammuz the stone tables were broken, and the daily offerings ceased, and the city was broken up, and Antipas III burned the law, and he set up an image in the temple. On the 9th of Ab it was proclaimed to our fathers, that they should not enter the land, and the house was ruined for the 1st and 2nd time, and thither was taken, and the city was plowed up. On entering Ab we must diminish joy. 7. The week in which the 9th of Ab comes, men are not allowed to clip their hair, or wash their clothes. But on Thursday they are allowed, for honor to the Sabbath. On the eve of the 9th of Ab one must not eat from 2 dishes, must not eat flesh, and must not drink wine. Rabban Simon the son of Gamaliel said, one must change the style of living. Our Judah enjoined to turn over the beds, but the sages did not approve him. 8. Said Rabban Simon the son of Gamaliel, there were no holidays in Israel like the 15th of Ab, or like the Day of Atonement. because in them the daughters of Jerusalem promenaded in white garments borrowed, that no one might be ashamed of her poverty. All these garments must be baptized. And the daughters of Jerusalem promenaded and danced in the vineyards. And what did they say? Look here, young man, and see whom you choose. Look not for beauty, look for family. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. And it is said, give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. For, and also it is. P. 168. Said, Go forth, O ye daughters of Zion, and behold King Solomon with the crown, wherewith his mother crowned him in the day of his espousals, and in the day of the gladness of his heart. 1. The day of his espousals, this is the gift of the law. And in the day of the gladness of his heart, this is the building of the sanctuary, and may it be speedily built in our days. Amen. Footnotes. 165 to 2 Numbers XXVII. 2. 165 to 3 Gen I. 6, etc. 166 to 1 Doid Vi. 4, etc. 166 to 2 part of March and April. 166 to 3 part of June and July. 166 to 4 part of July and August. 166 to 5 that is thieves of the pestle and dried figs. Because when forbidden by Jeroboam to go up to the temple with the first fruit and wood, they deceived the watchers by saying they were only going to press figs. Jeer. Tall. 167 to 1 part of August and September. 167 to 2 part of December and January. 167 to 3 Antiochus Epiphanes. 167 to 4 Prague. XXXI. 30, 31. 168 to 1 Seoul. Song, E. 11. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. P. 169. Treatise 9. 1. What is a child? Offerings, crooked and straight, remission of vows, persons unsuitable for the world, laying on of hands, baptisms, deathburnings, purity, vessels of the sanctuary. Chapter I. 1. All are bound to appear in the temple, except the deaf, an idiot, and a child, and an eunuch, and women, and slaves who are not free, and the lame, and the blind, and the sick, and the aged, and the man who cannot go afoot. What is a child? Everyone who cannot ride on the shoulder of his father, and go up from Jerusalem to the mountain of the house. The words of the school of Shammai. But the school of Hillel say, everyone who cannot grasp his father's hand, and go up from Jerusalem to the mountain of the house, as is said, 3 times. 2. 2. The school of Shammai say, the appearance in the temple is with 2 pieces of silver, and the peace offering with a miah of silver. 3. But the school of Hillel say, the appearance is with a miah of silver, and the feast offering with 2 pieces of silver. 3. The burnt offerings of the appointed feasts come from ordinary money, but the peace offering from tithes. The offerings on the first holiday of the Passover. 4. The school of Shammai say, from ordinary money, but the school of Hillel say, from tithes. P. 170. 4. Israelites discharge their duty with vows, with free will offerings, and with tithes of animals. And priests with sin offerings, with trespass offerings, and with the breast and shoulder, and firstborn, but not with fowls, nor with meat offerings. 5. If one have a large family and small income, he must bring more peace offerings, and less burnt offerings. If a small family and large income, he must bring more burnt offerings, and less peace offerings. If both be small, of this they say, a silver miah, and 2 pieces of silver are sufficient. If both be large, of this it is said, every man shall give as he is able according to the blessing of the Lord thy God which he hath given thee. 1. 6. When one did not bring his peace offering on the first holiday of the feast, he may bring it during the holidays, and even on the last day of the feast. If the feast passed over, and he did not bring the peace offering, he is not obliged to bring it. For this it is said, that which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. 2. 7. Rabbi Simon the son of Manasseh said, if thou shalt say, a thief or a robber, he may return and become straight. Or Simon the son of Jokai said, we do not call one crooked, save one straight at first, and he became afterwards crooked. And this is the disciple of the wise, who departs from the law. 8. The remission of vows is like flying in the air, and it has no foundation. The decisions for the Sabbath, peace offerings, and trespasses, are as mountains hanging on that hair. Because the verse is small but the decisions are many. Jurisprudence, and the temple service, cleanness and uncleanness, and illegal connections, have their own foundations. They are the body of the law. Footnotes. 169 to 1 The feast offering chagiga was the offering of individual worshippers, and was quite distinct from the sacrifices of the whole congregation. See Treatise on the Passover, by or note 169-2 Exod. XXIII. 14. 169-3 Worth perhaps 3D. 169-4 Jeer. Paul says Tabernacles. 170-1 Deut. XVI. 17. 170-2 ECCL. I. 15. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. P. 171. Chapter 2. 1. Men may not discourse on illegal connections with 3, 1, nor on the work of creation with 2, 2, nor on the cherubs with 1, 3, save when one is wise, and comprehends it of his own knowledge. Every one who considers 4 things, it were suitable for him that he did not come into the world. What is in the height? What is in the depth? What is before? And what is behind? And every one who is not anxious for the honor of his Creator, it were suitable for him that he did not come into the world. 2. Hosea the son of Joazar said that one is not to lay his hand on the offering. Hosea the son of Jochanan said, he is to lay his hand on the offering. Joshua the son of Berechiah said, that he is not to lay on his hand. Nittai the Arbalite said, he is to lay on his hand. Judah the son of Tobiah said, that he is not to lay on his hand. Simon the son of Shavach said, he is to lay on his hand. Shemaiah said, he is to lay on his hand. Abtalion said, he is not to lay on his hand. Hillel and Menahem did not dispute. Menahem went out and Shemaiah entered. Shemaiah said, he is not to lay on his hand. Hillel said, he is to lay on his hand. 4. The first were princes, and the second were presidents of the tribunal. 3. The school of Shemaiah said, men may bring peace offerings during the feast, but they are not to lay their hands on them, and they are not to bring burnt offerings. But the house of Hillel say, they may bring peace offerings, and burnt offerings, and lay their hands on them. 4. When Pentecost happens to be on the eve of the Sabbath, the school of Shemaiah say, the day of slaughtering the offering is after the Sabbath. But the P. 172. The school of Hillel say, there is no day of slaughtering after the Sabbath. But they both acknowledge that if it happened to be on the Sabbath, the day of slaughter is after the Sabbath. And the high priest must not robe in his vestments, though they are allowed in seasons of mourning and fasting, for fear of confirming the words of those who say that Pentecost is after the Sabbath. 1. 5. Men must wash their hands for ordinary eating, but for tithes and for the heave offering they must be baptized. And for the sin offering, if the hands be unclean, the body is unclean. 6. He who baptized himself for ordinary eating, and indicated it to be for ordinary eating, he is prohibited from eating the tithe. If he baptized for the tithe, and indicated it to be for the tithe, he is prohibited from eating heave offerings. If he baptized for heave offerings, and indicated it to be for heave offerings, he is prohibited from eating the holy flesh. If he baptized for the holy flesh, and indicated it to be for the holy flesh, he is prohibited from the sin offering. If he baptized for the weighty, he is permitted the light if he baptized, and did not indicate his intention. It is as no baptism. 7. Treading on the garments of an ordinary man defiled the Pharisees. Treading on the garments of the Pharisees defiled those who eat the heave offering. Treading on the garments of those who eat the heave offering defiled for the holy flesh. Treading on the garments of those who eat the holy flesh defiles for the sin offering. Joseph the son of Joazar was the most pious of the priesthood, and treading on his cloak defiled for the holy flesh. Jochanan the son of Gajada used to eat with the purification for the holy flesh all his life, and treading on his cloak defiled for the sin offering. Footnotes 171-1 from motives of delicacy. 171-2 This must be done only by one doidev. 32. 171-3 Ezek. X. Isaiah Vi. 171-4 This decision is for private sacrifices, but for public sacrifices there seems according to the Talmud to have been no laying on of hands, except in the case of the scapegoat and the blood, when the congregation had sinned through ignorance. 172-1 That is, the Sadducees Lev. XXII. 15. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. P. 173. Chapter 3. 1. There are more weighty rules for holy things, than for the heave offering. Because vessels may be baptized in vessels for the heave offering, but not for holy things. The outside and inside and handle are reckoned separately for the heave offering, but not for holy things. He who carries that which defiles by treading upon it, may carry the heave offering but not the holy flesh. Treading on the garments of those who eat the heave offering defiles for the holy flesh. The measure of the holy flesh is not as the measure of the heave offering. Because for the holy flesh one must loose his garments and dry himself, and baptize and afterwards bind them up. But in the heave offering he can bind them up and afterwards baptize himself. 2. Vessels completed in purity must be baptized for holy things, but not for the heave offering. But vessel unites whatever is inside to holy things, but not to the heave offering. The fourth degree of legal uncleanness 1 is disallowed in holy things, and the third degree in the heave offering. In the heave offering, if one of the hands be unclean, its fellow may be clean, but in holy things one must baptize both hands, because each renders its fellow unclean for holy things, but not for the heave offering. 3. Men may eat with unwashen hands the dry meat of the heave offering, but not the holy flesh. The first day mourner, and he who failed in atonement, have need of baptism for the holy flesh, but not for the heave offering. 4. There are weighty rules for the heave offering, because in Judah men are credited with the purity of wine and oil during the whole year. And in the time of wine pressing and oil pressing men are credited even for the heave. 174. Heave offering. When the time for wine and oil pressing has passed over, and a barrel of wine is brought for the heave offering, it must not be received. But one may let it stand over for the wine pressing next year. But if one said, I put into it a quarter log of holy wine, it is credited. Jugs of wine and jugs of oil which are mixed, they are credited in the time of wine pressing and oil pressing, and 70 days before that time. 5. From Modiath 1, and inwards, 2, men are credited for the purity of earthen vessels. From Modiath and outwards they are not credited. How? The potter, when he is selling pots, comes inwards from Modiath. One says, this is the potter, and these the pots, and these the purchasers, it is credited. When he went outwards, it is not credited. 6. The tax gatherers when they enter the house, and also the tax gatherers when they restore the vessels, are credited in saying, we did not touch them. And in Jerusalem they are credited in holy things that they did not defile them, and at the time of the feast they are credited even in the heave offering. 7. He who opened his barrel of wine, 3, and commenced with his dough for the use of the feast? Our Judah said, he may finish it after the feast. But the sages say, he must not finish it. When the feast was over, the priests looked round for the purity of the temple court. If the feast ended on Friday, they did not look round for honor to the approaching Sabbath. Our Judah said, even they did not look round on Thursday, because the priests are not then idle. 8. How did they look round for the purity of the court? The priests baptized the vessels, which were in the sanctuary, and used to say to the people, watch and do not touch the table and the candlestick, lest you render them unclean. All the vessels in the sanctuary were double and treble, because if the first became unclean, they could. P. 175. Bring duplicates instead of them. All the vessels which were in the sanctuary required baptism 1, except the golden altar, and the brazen altar, because they are as earth. The words of our Eliezer. But the sages say, because they were overlaid. Footnotes. 173-1 There are reckoned 6 degrees of uncleanness, the father of fathers, the first, second, third, and fourth children of defilement. There are altogether 29 fathers of uncleanness, of which 11 arise from contact with the dead body. 174-1 A city about 15 miles from Jerusalem. 174-2 towards Jerusalem. 174-3 This decision refers to the case of a dealer whose wine or flour might become legally defiled by contact with the common people. 175-1 The Tosafta relates that when the Pharisees were baptizing the candlestick, the Sadducees used to mock them by saying, they were baptizing the sun. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. P. 176. Treatise 10. Judges, Judgments, the Tribunal of 71, the Great Sanhedrin, the Small Sanhedrin, High Priest, Funerals, King, Royal Wives, Book of the Law, Objections to Judges, Relations, Examination of Witnesses, Evidence, Judgments in Money and Judgments in Souls, Form of the Sanhedrin, Appointment of Judges, Intimidation of Witnesses, Investigations, Acquittal or Condemnation, Stoning, Hanging, Burning, Beheading, the Strangling, Blasphemy, Idolatry, Enticing, Sorcery, a son stubborn and rebellious, Burglary, Murder, Theft, those who have no portion in the world to come, the rebellious elder, the false prophet, the false witness. Chapter I. 1. Judgments for money require 3 judges. Robbery and beating require 3. Damages or half damages, double payments and payments 4 or 5-fold require 3. Constraint, and enticement, and slander require 3. The words of Armire. But the sages say, slander requires 23 judges, because there is this in judgments of souls. 2. Stripes require 3 judges. In the name of Rabbi Ishmael, the sages say, 23. The intercalary month 1, requires 3. The intercalary year requires 3. The words of Rabbi Meir. Rabban Simon the son of P. 177. Paragraph continues. Gamaliel said, with 3 judges they begin, and with 5 they discuss, and they conclude with 7. And if they concluded with 3 it is intercalated. 3. The appointment of elders, and striking off the heifer's neck 1, require 3. The words of Rabbi Simon. But Rabbi Judah said, 5. The loosing off a shoe, 2, and dissatisfaction in marriage require 3. Produce 3, of the 4th year, 4, the second tithes, of which the value is unknown require 3. The valuation of holy things requires 3. The estimation of movable things requires 3. Our Judah said, one of them must be a priest. Immovable things require 9 judges and a priest. And the valuation of a man's slave is similar. 4. Judgments of souls require 23 judges. Bestiality requires 23, as is said, and thou shalt slay the woman and the beast, and it is also said, the beast thou shalt slay. An ox to be stoned requires 23 judges. As it is said, the ox shall be stoned, and his owner also shall be put to death. 5. As is the death of the owner, so is the death of the ox. The wolf, and the lion, and the bear, and the leopard, and the panther, and the serpent, are to be put to death with 23 judges. Our Eliezer said, everyone who first killed them has gained honor. Our Akiba said, they are to be put to death after judgment with 23 judges. 5. A tribe must not be judged, nor a false prophet, nor a high priest, save before the tribunal of 71. And soldiers must not go forth to lawful warfare, save by a decree of the tribunal of 71. Men must not add to the city or to the temple courts, save by a decision of the tribunal of 71. They must not appoint judges to the tribes, save by a decision of the tribunal of 71. A city must not be excluded, save by the tribunal of 71. And the tribunal must not exclude a city on the border, nor exclude 3 cities, but only 1 or 2. 6. The great Sanhedrin consisted of 71 members. P. 178. And the small one of 23. And whence know we that the great one contained 71? As is said, gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, 1, and Moses over them. There are 71. Our Judah said 70. And whence know we that the small one consisted of 23? As is said, then the congregation shall judge. 2. And the congregation shall deliver. A congregation to judge, and a congregation to deliver, there is 20. And whence know we that a congregation required 10? As is said, how long shall I bear with this evil congregation? 3. Joshua and Caleb were accepted. And whence know we to produce the other 3? From the meaning, as is said, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. 4. I am hearing that I shall be with them for good. If so, why is it said, to decline after many to wrest judgment? 4. Because thy inclinations to good do not equal thy inclinations to evil. Thy inclinations to good are by the report of 1. Thy inclinations to evil are by the report of 2. And a tribunal must not be balanced. Another must be added. There are 23. And how populous must be the cities suited for judges? 120. Our Nehemiah said, 230 to represent 23 overseers of tens. Footnotes. 176 to 1. The Jewish year is composed of 12 lunar months. It is adapted to the solar year by the use of an intercalary month called Vidar, the additional adder. Every 19 years there are 7 occasions on which this embolismic month must be introduced to prevent the various feasts revolving over the 4 seasons of the year, like the Muslim fast of Ramadan. Formerly the Sanhedrin arranged this intercalary month to suit the harvest, so that if it were late, the wave sheep and other observances should still be kept according to their proper dates. When, however, the Sanhedrin was suppressed by the Emperor Constantine, Hillel II of Tiberias ruled that an intercalary month of 29 days should be added in the 3d, 6th, 8th, 11th, 13th, 17th, and 19th years of the Matthic cycle. This decision has since remained the Jewish standard for reckoning time. 177 to 1 Doit. XXI. 4. 177 to 2 Doit XX. 5, 9. 177 to 3 Lev Zix. 24. 177 to 4 Doit. Zip. 22-25. 177 to 5 Exod. XXI. 29. 178 to 1 Numzai. 17. 178 to 2 Num. XXXV. 24, 25. A congregation or minion must not be less than 10 men. If there be 10,000 women they cannot form a minion. The Lord Jesus more mercifully promises his presence to 2 or 3 gathered together. Matt. XVII. 20. 178 to 3 Num. Zip. 27. 178 to 4 Exod. XXII. 2. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 2. 1. A high priest may judge, and be judged. 5. He may bear witness, and witness may be borne against him. He may have his shoe loosed, and the shoe may be loosed for his wife. 6. His brother may take his wife, but he must not take his brother's wife, because he is prevented from marrying a. P. 179. Widow. If there happened a death in his family, he must not go immediately behind the bier. But when the mourners are concealed in a street, then he is discovered to the public. They are discovered to the public, and he is concealed in a street. And he may go with them to the entrance gate of the city. The words of Armire. Judah said, he must not depart from the sanctuary. As is said, neither shall he go out of the sanctuary. 1. And when he comforts others, the fashion of all the people is to pass one after the other, and the deputy priest puts him in the middle between himself and the people. But when he is comforted by others, all the people say to him, we are thy atonement. And he says to them, you shall be blessed from heaven. And at the first meal too, after a funeral, all the people recline on the ground, and he sits on the stool. 2. The king neither judges, nor is judged. He neither bears witness, nor is witness borne against him. He does not unloose the shoe, and the shoe is not unloosed for his wife. He does not marry his brother's wife, nor is his wife married by his brother. Judah said, if he pleased he may unloose the shoe, or marry his brother's wife. He is remembered in prayer for good. The sages said to him, we do not hear him the king for unloosing the shoe, and his widow must not marry. Judah said, the king may marry the widow of a king, as we find with David that he married the widow of Saul. As is said, and I gave thee thy master's house, and thy master's wives into thy bosom. 3. If there happened a death in his family, he goes not out from the entrance of his palace. Judah said, if he pleases to go after the bier he may go, as we find in David that he went after the bier of Abner. As is said, and King David himself followed the bier. 4. The sages said to him, this only happened to pacify the people. And at the first meal after a funeral, all the people recline on the ground, and he sits on the sofa. 4. And he may go forth to lawful warfare by order of the Supreme Court of 71, and he may break down a p. 180. Road for himself, and none can prevent him. The road of a king is without measure, and all the people plunder and lay it before him. And he takes part first. He must not multiply wives beyond 18. Judah said, he may multiply wives for himself so long as they do not turn away his heart. Simon said, even if one turn away his heart, he should not marry her. If so, wherefore is it said, he must not multiply for himself wives, even though they be as Abigail? He must not multiply horses, except sufficient for his own riding. And silver and gold he must not multiply much, only sufficient to pay his own expenses. And he must write a book of the law for himself. When he goes out to war, he must bring it with him. When he returns, he must bring it with him. If he sit in judgment it is with him. When he is seated it is before him, as is said, and it shall be with him, and he shall read therein all the days of his life. 1. 5. None may ride on his horse, and none may sit on his chair, and none may use his scepter, and none may see him shaving, either when he is naked, or in the bath, as is said, thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee. 2. That his dread be upon thee. Footnotes 178-5 The great Sanhedrin could whip the high priest for certain offenses, and afterwards restore him to his office. 178-6-8. XXV. 9. 179-1 Lev XXI. 12. 179-22 Sam E. 35. 179-32 Sam Z. 8. 179-42 Sam E. 31. 180-1 Doit. XVII. 19. 180-2 Doit. XVII. 15. The Talmud, by Joseph Parkman, 1878. Chapter 3. 1. Judgments in money matters require 3 judges. This party chooses for himself one, and the other party chooses for himself one. And both parties choose another. The words of Armire. But the sages say, the 2 judges choose for themselves the other. This one may declare the judge of that one illegal. And that one may declare the judge of this one illegal. The words of Armire. But the sages say, it is only when witness can be brought against them that they are related or unlawful. But if they be righteous or experienced, they must not be declared illegal. This one may declare illegal the witness of that one. And that one may declare illegal the witness of this. P. 181. 1. The words of Armire. But the sages say, it is only when witness can be brought against them that they are related or unlawful, but if they be righteous they must not be declared illegal. 2. One said to the other, I trust my father, I trust thy father, I trust 3 cowherds. Armire said, he may change his mind. But the sages say, he must not change. If he must give an oath to his companion, and he said to him, vow to me by the life of thy head? Armire said, he may change his mind. But the sages say, he must not change his mind. 3. and these are legal as judges or witnesses, one who played at cards, or lent on usury, or bet on the flight of doves, or trades in the sabbatical year. Our Simon said, at first they were called gatherers on the sabbatical year. When they were forced by Gentiles to cultivate the ground, they changed to call them traders on the sabbatical year. Our Judah said, it is only when they have no other occupation but this one alone, but if they have another occupation, they are allowed. 4. And these are related, his father and his brother, and the brethren of his father, and the brethren of his mother, and the husband of his sister, and the husband of his father's sister, and the husband of his mother's sister, and the husband of his mother and his father-in-law, and his brother-in-law, they, their children, and their sons-in-law, and his stepson alone. Our Hosea said, this was the teaching of our Akiva. But the first teaching was, his uncle and the son of his uncle, and all suitable for inheritance, and everyone related to him at the present time. One was related and became estranged. He is lawful. Our Judah said, even if his daughter died, and he has children left by her, they are related. 5. Who is a friend? And who is an enemy? A friend is the bridegroom's best man, an enemy is everyone who has not spoken with him 3 days in malice. The sages replied to him, Israelites are not so suspicious. 6. How are witnesses examined? They are brought. P. 182. In and intimidated. And all other men are driven out. And the chief of the witnesses is left, and they say to him, tell us, how do you know that this man is indebted to that man? If the witness said, he told me that I am indebted to him, such a man told me that he is indebted to him, he has said nothing, till he shall say, he acknowledged in our presence that he owed him 200 zuz. And afterwards the second witness is brought in, and examined. If their statements were found agreeing, the judges held a conversation. 2 of them said he is clear, and 1 said he is indebted. He is cleared. 2 said, he is indebted, and 1 said, he is cleared. He is indebted. 1 said he is clear, and 1 said he is indebted. And even if 2 pronounced him clear or indebted, and 1 said, I don't know, the judges must be increased. 7. The matter is finished. They bring in the plaintiff and defendant. The chief judge says, thou, such a one, art clear. Thou such an one, art indebted. And whence know we that one of the judges on going out should not say, I was for clearing him, but my colleagues pronounced him indebted, but what shall I do when my colleagues are too many for me? Of this man it is said, thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people. 1. And it is said, a talebearer revealeth secrets. 2. 8. At any time the one condemned may bring evidence and annul the judgment. The judges said to him, bring all your evidence within 30 days from this date. If he brought them within 30 days, it is another. If after 30 days, it is not another. Rabban Simon the son of Gamaliel said, what shall he do if he did not find them within 30 days, but found them after 30 days? The judges said to him, bring witnesses. And he said, I have no witnesses. They said, bring evidence. And he said, I have no evidence, but afterwards he found evidence, and found witnesses. They are nothing. Rabban Simon the son of Gamaliel said, what shall he do if he did not know? P. 183. That he had witnesses, and found witnesses. He did not know that he had evidence, and found evidence? They said to him, bring witnesses. He said, I have no witnesses. Bring evidence, and he said, I have no evidence. He saw that he will be pronounced indebted in judgment, and he said, approach such an one, and bear witness for me, or he pulled out evidence from his pocket. It is nothing. Footnotes. 182 to 1 Lev 6. 16. 182 to 2 Krav Zai. 13. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 4. 1. Judgments in money and judgments in souls must be equally inquired into and investigated. As is said, ye shall have one manner of law. 1. What is the difference between judgments in money and judgments in souls? Judgments in money require 3 judges, judgments in souls 23. Judgments in money open the case either for clearing or proving indebted, but judgments of souls open the case for clearing, and the case is not opened for condemning. Judgments in money are balanced by 1 judge either for clearing or proving indebted, but judgments in souls are balanced by 1 for clearing and by 2 for condemning. Judgments in money may be reversed either for clearing or proving indebted, but judgments in souls may be reversed for clearing, but must not be reversed for condemnation. All may express an opinion on judgments in money for clearing or proving indebted. All may express an opinion on judgments in souls for clearing, but all must not express an opinion for condemnation. He who has expressed an opinion on judgments in money for proving indebted, may express an opinion for clearing, and he who has expressed an opinion for clearing, may express an opinion for proving indebted. He who has expressed an opinion on judgments in souls for condemnation may express an opinion for clearing, but he who has expressed an opinion for clearing must not reverse it to express an opinion for condemnation. Judgments. P. 184. In money are conducted by day and settled by night. Judgments in souls are conducted by day and settled by day. Judgments in money are settled on the same day, either for clearing or proving indebted. Judgments in souls are finished on the same day for clearing, and on the day after it for condemnation, wherefore there can be no judgments on Friday or on the eve of a festival. 1. 2. Judgments in legal uncleanness and legal cleansings begin with the supreme judge. Judgments in souls begin with the judge at his side. All are eligible to pronounce judgments in money matters, but all are not eligible to pronounce judgments in souls. Only priests, Levites, and Israelites who can intermarry into the priesthood. 3. The Sanhedrin was like half a round threshing floor, in order that the members might observe each other. And 2 scribes of the judges stood before them, one on the right and one on the left. And they wrote the sentence of acquittal, and the sentence of condemnation. Our Judah said, 3. 1 scribe wrote the sentence of acquittal, and 1 wrote the sentence of condemnation. And the third wrote both the sentence of acquittal and the sentence of condemnation. 4. And 3 rows of the disciples of the wise sat before them. And each one knew his place. When it was necessary to appoint a judge, they appointed 1 from the first row. 1 from the second row came instead of him into the first, and 1 from the third row came instead of him into the second, and they selected another from the congregation, and they seated him in the third row, and he did not sit in the place of his predecessor, but he sat in a place suitable for himself. 5. How did the judges intimidate witnesses in the testimony for souls? They introduced them, and intimidated them. Perhaps you are speaking from guess? Or from hearsay? Witness from witness? Or from a trustworthy man we heard it? Or perhaps you don't know that at last we shall proceed to inquire into your own character and P. 185. Investigate it. Have a knowledge that the judgments of money are not as judgments of souls. In judgments for money, when the man pays the money he has atoned. In judgments for souls his blood and the blood of his posterity are suspended till the end of the world. So we find it with Cain when he slew his brother. It is said of him, 1. The voice of thy brother's blood cried. He does not say thy brother's blood, but bloods of thy brother, his blood and the blood of his posterity. Another thing is also meant, that thy brother's bloods are spattered on wood, and on stones. Therefore man is created single, to teach thee that every one who destroys one soul from Israel, to him is the verse applicable, as if he destroys a full world. And every one who supports one soul in Israel, to him is the verse applicable, as if he supports the full world. And it is also said, for the peace of creation, that no man may justly say to his companion, my Father is greater than thine. And that the Epicureans should not say, that there are more creators in the heavens, and it is also said, to show forth the greatness of the Holy One, blessed be he. When man stamps many coins with one stamp, all are alike. But the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be he, stamped every man with the stamp of the first Adam, and no one of them is like his companion. Therefore everyone is bound to say, for my sake was the world created. But, perhaps, the witnesses will say, what is this trouble to us? But is it not already said, and is a witness, whether he hath seen or known of it? If he do not utter it? 2. But perhaps the witnesses will say, what is it to us, to be guilty of this man's blood? But is it not already said, when the wicked perish, there is shouting? 3. Footnotes. 183 to 1 Lev XXIV. 22. 184 to 1 This rule was violated in the case of our Lord Jesus Christ. Matthew XXVI. XXVII. Mark Ziv. Luke XXII. XXII. John 6. 185 to 1 Gen A. 10. 185 to 2 Lev. V. 1. 185 to 3 Prov Xi. 10. The Talmud, by Joseph Barclay, 1878. Chapter 5. 1. The witnesses were examined with 7 investigations. In what sabbatical year? In what year? In P. 186. What month? What date in the month? What day? What hour? What place? Our Jose said, what day? What hour? What place? Did you know him? Did you warn him? In a case of idolatry, whom did he serve? And with what did he serve? 2. Every judge who extends examinations is praiseworthy. It happened that the son of Zakkai examined even on the stems of figs. And what difference is there between investigations and examinations? In investigations, if one say, I don't know, their witness is worthless. In examinations, if one say I don't know, and even 2 say, we don't know, their witness stands. whether in investigations or examinations, when they contradict each other, their witness is worthless. 3. One witness said, on the 2nd of the month, and another witness said, the 3rd of the month. Their witness stands.